Chapter 803. Originally, there were many humans in this singularity. For some reason, the Lionheart King, who seemed to be a fake demon, was cruel and heartless. The Lionheart King, who defeated the Lionheart King, wantonly slaughtered those who could not be chosen because he chose the pure ones. The Gorilla Knight's slaughter caused the human population to decrease. The Egyptian people in the desert were sent back to their original era by Ramses II. The chosen pure ones were stored in the Holy Tower in the center of the Holy City. It was destroyed by Yemen's lightning and the population decreased again. Currently, it was unlikely that there would be any humans in the wilderness. Even if there were, they would be people who would die of hunger and thirst soon. Of course, it was also possible that they had already died because the human population decreased. In other words, apart from the mountain people gathered in the West Village and the refugees hidden by Lancelot, there was no one else in this singularity. It was still the same sentence. The reason why the burning of humanity could last for a while was not only because of the existence of Chaldea, but also because of the remaining humans in the singularity. With the disappearance of humans, the singularity had completely collapsed, and humanity could no longer be saved. We were tricked by you, Flawless. They were too focused on the enemy in front of them, and neglected the little operations of the enemy behind them. However, the West Village had Abanti, Giliel, and Osriel. Although it was possible that they could not destroy the demon god pillars temporarily because of protecting the villagers, the demon god pillars should not be taken advantage of, so there was no need to worry too much. The most important thing was the refugees hidden by Lancelot. Wuming was afraid that the demon god pillars would also appear there. After sending Gadotzi and the others to the West Village, Wuming's doppelganger gave a simple explanation, and immediately used the teleportation gate to go to the rather secluded place where Lancelot hid the refugees. However, through the doppelganger's information, Wuming's expression was very ugly. The demon god pillars had also appeared there. Moreover, it seemed that the people there were used as sacrifices to summon them. Noticing Wuming's expression, Flawless was quite happy. How is it, Origin Dragon? I didn't lose out this time no matter what. I never thought that the nourishment would be so great that it could actually make so many of our demon god pillars appear. Since it has appeared, we have to do some delightful things. Ha ha ha. Clearly, the multiple demon god pillars were due to Ramses II's powerful spiritual base. Floros was very happy now. Even if it would be killed later, it did not matter. Flawless understood that as long as Wuming was there, these demon god pillars would definitely be eliminated. Flawless was well aware of this. But as Floros said, it was impossible for it to lose. After all, even if he left it alone, this singularity was just that. However, as long as it messed up a little, as long as it could gain a little bit of advantage, Flawless would have profited. If Floros' plan succeeded, the singularity would disappear, and the singularity would die. Then, there would be no hope for humanity. I won't make a loss, but I might make a profit, and I might even make a lot of money. This was what made Floros happy. Suddenly, a sun appeared in a place far away. It was the refugee gathering place where Wuming's clone was. The infuriated Wuming directly sent a sun incarnation over there, burning the demon god pillar phoenix that the humans had used as a sacrifice to summon it to nothing. It died in the flames. How ironic was that? However, it still could not eliminate Wuming's hatred for Floros. Excalibur. When Wuming was distracted, Artoria had already released her noble artifact. Along with the shout of her real name, the demon god pillar, Yemen, disappeared. Queen Artoria was different from when she was young. Even if she lost her holy spear, Artoria was still a powerful lion king with a holy sword in her hand. Yemen's thunder could not resist the light of the planet. In the golden light, the golden Yemen disappeared. Your heart is a little messed up. Artoria looked at Wuming. No matter what happened, Artoria's heart was still as water. At most, her heart would beat faster when she was with Wu Ming. As a warrior, maintaining a stable heart was the most important thing. Ska Ha had also taught Wu Ming about this. This was the most basic thing, and Wu Ming had lost it. Wu Ming laughed at himself and began to activate his relic, real name Liberation. The meteor silver was damaged and turned into a golden light sword. The light it released instantly covered the demon god pillar, Babados. Excalibur. The demon god pillar, Babados, could not resist the evil noble artifact at all. It was destroyed in an instant. Oh, it seems like you're not in a good mood. Floros mocked. After Yaman was killed by Artoria, Floros stopped attacking. It was ready to disappear in the light of the holy sword. However, mocking its nemesis, the Dragon of Origin, before it died, made Floros very happy. Leah, I'm really messed up. But there's one thing I've always been clear about. I'm not a warrior. I'm destined to be, however, Wu Ming through the meteor silver that had turned back into a solid sword. The golden ripple engulfed it. Wu Ming was not ready to use the holy sword on Floros. A god that needs to be looked up to by thieves. In an instant, Wu Ming's pupils turned into a noble golden color again. Floros was shocked by Wu Ming's aura that was comparable to its king. It was just like what Wu Ming said. At that moment, Wu Ming was a god. What did a god need to do? Naturally, it was to punish the thieves and make them suffer a fate worse than death. This spell is powerful and eloquent. It's the sword of wisdom that calls for victory. With my skill of the spirit of words, let the justice of the world appear. Wu Ming's magic burst out, forming a tornado-like airwave with Wu Ming as the center. Appear, the golden sword of the spirit of words. As another incarnation chanted, the golden meteor silver slowly rose from the ground. In the end, Wu Ming held it in his hand. Meteor silver. No, it's a sword with a special appearance. Even Artoria had recognized it wrongly at the beginning. It could be seen how powerful Wu Ming was at that moment. That is. Floros, who was shocked, instantly recovered from his daze. Although he did not know what the sword that Wu Ming took out was, no matter how stupid he was, Floros knew that the sword was not simple. What's more, Floros felt an unusual aura from the sword. Your name is Floros. Legend has it that you are one of the 72 demon gods under King Solomon. You are ranked 64th, a duke, and command 36 legions. As Wu Ming chanted, golden meteor silver seeped out from the ground and lined up beside Wu Ming. You! Floros was terrified. He had already felt that the golden swords around Wu Ming seemed to have the power to restrain him. Anyway, now he looked at the golden swords like a mouse seeing a cat. But, according to legend, Floros has another name, Whores. Golden swords, with Wu Ming as the starting point, instantly covered the land with a radius of a few kilometers. Even the golden swords in the sky were not spared. The golden swords were densely packed and seemed to be randomly arranged in the air. Inherent enchantment. Floros recognized this move. Although it looked like it was surrounded by golden swords, at that moment, he, Wu Ming, and Artoria had already arrived in another space. No matter if it is Floros or Whores, there are only differences in the translation during the transmission. The two of them are actually the same person. They are both demon gods from hell. The golden swords in the sky all turned their direction, and the tip of the swords pointed at the demon god pillar, Floros. It is said that Floros has two forms. One is a leopard, and the other is a human. When he is in his human form, his eyes are like flames. The golden swords on the ground also moved. They treated the ground as nothing, and the tip of the golden swords on the ground all pointed at Floros. Bastard! Floros roared in anger. Countless black fog and heat rays spread out from Floros's pillar at an extremely fast speed. He felt that if he did not take action to resist, then he would be finished. The sixth sense of a demon god told Floros that the consequences of being stabbed by these golden swords might be more serious than being sent away by the holy sword. He might die. Or maybe, he would rather die. Chapter 804. Wuming did not use this avatar often. After all, if the opponent was not a god, this avatar was basically useless. However, as the avatar soaked in the root and evolved, Wuming used it as his trump card. Wuming's third avatar warrior retained the foundation of the Sword of Spirit Speech. It greatly strengthened the Sword of Spirit Speech to the point where he could activate it even if he did not fully understand the opponent. Of course, he needed to know some information before he could activate it. He could not seal the enemy just because he knew the enemy's name. That would be too crazy. However, it might work in the future. After all, Wuming's 12 avatars had been evolving. I wonder if it would work on Gydia. Last time when he faced Gydia, other than the ability of his main body, his other abilities did not work on Gydia. Wuming guessed that it might be because of the black mud. Forget it. I'll think about it when the time comes. Wuming shook his head silently. After all, it was better to deal with the matter at hand first. Other than not needing to fully understand the enemy's information, this warrior avatar retained the ability to cut the divinity and seal the opponent's ability. He also gained a powerful ability in the aspect of cutting. For example, he could cut Floros out from the concept of the 72 demon god pillars. Wuming waved his hand and countless Sword of Spirit Speech pierced through Floros' attack and stabbed into the body of the demon god pillar. Ugh! This is, when the golden sword stabbed into Floros' body, Floros could clearly feel that his abilities were disappearing one by one. Even the divinity that belonged to the demon god was gradually being stripped away. The connection between him and the other demon god pillars and the 72 demon god pillars was also gradually being cut off. Damn it! Root Dragon. As his abilities were sealed, the demon mist released from Floros' body and the heat rays from the countless eyes disappeared like an illusory smoke. My power! What have you done? Floros found that the power it had lost did not seem to disappear. It was as if it had never existed in the first place. It could no longer feel any of its power. Even the body of the demon god pillar was about to dissipate in Floros' eyes. Of course, Floros' feeling was real. All of Floros' power was sealed in the golden sword. The golden sword was similar to the Prometheus slate, which could steal the enemy's authority. It was a different method but the same effect. However, Wuming's golden sword could only seal the enemy's power into the sword. It could not be used. If he removed the golden sword, the seal would be removed as well. What Wuming wanted to do was to seal the entire concept of Floros, which had already broken away from the 72 demon god pillars, into the golden sword. He wanted it to live a life worse than death and to live forever. No. 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 I am the great devil god, the king's most perfect subordinate. How is this possible? Following Floros' final words, the demon god pillar disappeared. The golden meteor silver in Wuming's hand was now filled with black runes. That was the entire concept of Floros. It was all sealed in the golden sword by Wuming. It's over, Wuming said emotionlessly. At that moment, Wuming's heart had also calmed down. Just like what Artoria said, Wuming's heart was in a mess. However, Wuming did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. Firstly, compared to the warrior, he was more like a god. Wuming, who had gradually gotten used to his original form, understood that he had already embarked on the path of becoming a god. In the future, he might be able to kill his enemies with a slap of his claws. Therefore, the warrior had already distanced himself from Wuming. Secondly, the main reason why Wuming liked humans was that other than the possibilities of humans, it was also because of the various emotions of humans. It was precisely because of emotions that humans were so colorful. Wuming appreciated this very much and believed that he should not suppress his emotions. This was also the reason why Wuming treated Artoria and the others' feelings for him seriously. Rumble, suddenly, the earth began to shake. Earthquake. However, Wuming immediately denied this possibility. Because the sky began to shatter bit by bit. This was the sign that the singularity was about to repair itself. Because the last enemy was defeated, the singularity began to repair itself. Artoria said as she looked at the torn earth and shattered sky. Although she looked at Wuming. With my spirit base as the price, I should be able to hold on for a while. You still have something to say to the people of Chaldea, right? Even if she had lost the Holy Spear, the Lion King was still the Lion King. Currently, she was still the goddess Lungominiad. Naturally, she could do it. Liao. Wuming was touched, but he also felt sad for Artoria's death. This body has ended long ago. I should return to my seat. Don't be sad for me. As she spoke, Artoria walked to Wuming's side and wrapped one hand around Wuming's neck. She pulled Wuming down and kissed him instantly. Wuming only had one thought at that moment, as expected of the queen. So bold, after a brief kiss, Artoria ended the kiss. Not only Guinevere, I am also waiting for you to pick me up. Artoria held the holy sword in one hand and wrapped the other around Wuming's neck. She looked into Wuming's eyes just like that. Wuming hugged Artoria back and rested his forehead on hers. Yes, my king. In the West Village, with the support of Gadotsi and the others, the demon god pillars Habas and Nibirius that descended in the West Village were successfully destroyed by Abanti, Gopril, and Azrael. Immediately after, they also felt the changes in the sky and the earth. It should be the singularity repairing itself. Looks like it's in a hurry. Fujimaru, Matthew, Da Vinci, get ready. Roman, prepare the Reiki transfer immediately. Olga Marie's voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. When they left the desert and came to the West Village, Gadotsi's communication with Chaldea was restored. On the other side of Chaldea, Olga Marie, who just came out of her room, was responsible for answering the call. And Roman naturally retreated to the second-in-command position. Yes, I understand. Roman's weak voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. So, Senior Villo has taken care of the enemy over there. Matthew was overjoyed. I knew Assassin would not disappoint us. Fufu, who was lying on Matthew's shoulder, also went along with the current situation and called out Fufu a few times. Are you guys leaving? Cursed Risthausen, who was resting on the ground, stood up. Chapter 805. Not only cursed Risthausen, but the other few servants also changed from sitting on the ground to rest, to a standing posture. After all, their friends were about to leave, so they should stand up and express their politeness. And the reason why they called the servants few was that they had no choice. Although they were the most supportive, their opponents were the demon god pillars after all, which was already a calamity for them. Arash and Bayface Hassan had already been sacrificed. Arash chose to self-destruct his noble artifact, instantly injuring the demon god pillar Hapas. 100 Faces Hassan, on the other hand, was engulfed by the demon god pillar Nibirius heat ray in order to save Quiet Hassan. Tang Sanzang and Fujiwara had already been sacrificed before Gadotsi and the others came. However, because of Tang Sanzang and Fujiwara's sacrifice, the villagers here were all fine. They were all covered and retreated to the west. After all, Abanti, Giliel, and Osriel did not value humans very much. Coupled with the frequent attacks of the two demon god pillars, even if it was Wuming's order, they could not and did not want to completely protect the villagers. Therefore, other than Gadotsi, Matthew, and Da Vinci who belonged to Chaldea, the remaining servants were Cursed Wrist Hassan, Quiet Hassan, Lancelot, and Guinevere. However, because they were servants, they were not really dead. Therefore, everyone was not too sad. They just lamented that they could not walk to the end together. Fortunately, it's all over. Lancelot, who was standing behind Matthew, used Alandet to support his body. He was covered in blood and gasping for breath. He had suffered a lot of injuries in the desert before. After coming here, in order to protect Guinevere and Matthew, he was indirectly targeted by the demon god pillars. He was seriously injured. Although he did not leave, he was almost done. It was a miracle that Lancelot did not leave. This might be love. Lancelot, are you okay? After all, he was the one who risked his life to save him. Guinevere thought that he had to show some concern even if it was just for show. Your Highness, it's good that you are fine. As long as Guinevere was fine, Lancelot was relieved. I'm fine. Sir Lancelot, you should pay attention to your injuries. After all, from Guinevere's point of view, Lancelot was no longer severely injured. He was as good as dead. Dad, don't move around. You're hurt too badly. Matthew noticed that Lancelot had stood up and immediately pressed him down to sit down. Ugh. Lancelot felt a mouthful of blood rise to his throat, but he swallowed it back down. He was agitated by Matthew calling him, Dad, I'm fine. Ah, my dear daughter, Star. As long as his daughter, Matthew, was fine, Lancelot could die without regrets. Speaking of which, the singularity doesn't seem to be shaking anymore. What Gadotsi meant was that the singularity's self-healing seemed to have stopped. Something must have happened in the villa. Da Vinci looked in the direction of the desert. At this moment, a pillar of light appeared at the location of the great temple complex. What is that? Gadotsi was shocked. Did a new enemy appear? The detection shows that the pillar of light is temporarily supporting the singularity, but don't worry, the detection also shows that the pillar of light won't last long. Olga Mary's voice came from Gadotsi's bracelet. That's my king, Lancelot suddenly said. Ha! The Lion King. Matthew was stunned. Maybe it has something to do with the villa. Guinevere guessed. Lancelot looked at Guinevere, who was unusually happy when talking about the villa, and felt a little strange. But then, Lancelot shook his head. He just needed to watch from afar. After all, he already had such a lovely daughter. Lancelot looked at Matthew with a relieved expression. However, Mushu didn't notice it and ran away quickly. Senior Villo, are you okay? Matthew, along with Gadotsi and Guinevere, quickly went to Wuming, who suddenly used the portal to come here. Gotcha. Wuming seemed to hear the sound of something breaking from Lancelot's side and looked curiously. But other than a heavily injured man who was about to die, nothing else broke. Minister Lancelot, let me treat your injuries first. After all, since he saw Lancelot, it was better to heal him first. After all, he looked pale and heartbroken. It seemed that his injury was very serious and he might be sent back to the Martyr's Palace in the next second. No need, Sir Villo. It's over anyway. Even if you heal me, I will disappear afterward. Lancelot smiled. Although Wuming felt that Lancelot's smile was very forced, however, Lancelot was right. After the singularity repaired itself, everyone would be sent back to Earth. Assassin, is there anything going on over there? What's with that beam of light? Gadotsi pointed at the beam of light curiously. That's the Lion King using his spiritual base to temporarily support the singularity. I have something to tell you, Wuming replied. Wuming came in front of everyone and looked around. The West Village basically didn't look like a village. If it weren't for the wood and wreckage of the houses, it would be impossible to recognize that it used to be a village. And the number of servants was so small. Wuming was quite emotional. It seems that you guys have worked hard too. But that was the right thing to do. After all, cutting down the demon god pillars like cutting melons and vegetables could only happen to people like him and Artoria. Lancelot was seriously injured and was about to die. Although Quiet Hassan seemed to be fine, his breath was also very weak. Matthew and Gadotzi were also in a mess. It seemed that only Guinevere was okay. Yes, there was also Fufu, the little guy, who could still maintain his beautiful fur after the battle. It was worthy of being the fourth beast. As for the others who were missing, there was no doubt that they had all left. Seeing Wuming staring at Foe, who was hiding behind her neck and shivering, Ma Shu suddenly realized what was going on and explained. Villo Sr., Fufu disappeared after coming to the West Village with us. I just found it in the village when I came back. To be precise, Fufu ran over by itself. After looking at Fufu a little, Wuming no longer cared about it. Wuming began to talk about the main topic. Tachika, Matthew, the last singularity you are going to is the Mesopotamia region around 2600 BC, which is the Mesopotamia region in Western Asia. Chapter 806. However, before Gadotzi and Matthew could be surprised, Olga Marie in Chaldea's control room was the first to be surprised. Mesopotamia. Olga. Is your seclusion over? Olga Marie's voice came from Gadotzi's bracelet, attracting Wuming's attention. What seclusion? What a strange way to put it, you bastard. Olga Marie said sarcastically. Since you don't know about the last singularity, you must have just come out of seclusion. Chaldea should have detected the location of the last singularity. It seems that Roman hasn't told you yet. Wuming's judgment was right. Olga Marie did take over Roman's position as soon as she came out of the room. Then, Olga Marie went crazy. Roman. Why didn't you tell me such an important thing? And from Chaldea's control room, Roman's voice came faintly, Director, you didn't let me speak without permission from the beginning. Then, there was a loud noise, and Roman's voice disappeared. Ignoring what was happening in Chaldea's control room, Wuming looked at the world that was faintly shaking and repairing itself, then looked at Gadotzi and Matthew. There's not much time left, I'll make it short, I've been to that singularity. Take this, it should be able to help you. Wuming said, taking out a palm-sized white scale that contained magical power. What a beautiful scale, Gadotzi carefully took it. Oh, it's a very rare material. Da Vinci carefully looked at the scale with his glasses. I didn't expect Senior Villo to have been to 2600 BC. Matthew said in disbelief. The enemy of that era is beyond your imagination, be prepared. Wuming reminded with a smile, but he didn't say who the enemy was. Gadotzi was about to complain, but Olga Marie's voice came again. Tachika, Matthew, Da Vinci, the ray shift is ready. Right, there's also this. Help me hold it. In the end, Wuming took out a holy grail from the golden ripples. Another holy grail. Gadotzi was stunned. However, they had also encountered multiple holy grails at the American singularity, so they were not too surprised. However, Wuming shook his head. This isn't the Holy Grail, it's just a sealed vessel in the style of the Holy Grail. And the one sealed inside was naturally Floros. I have sealed the concept of the demon god pillar Floros into this container. However, it is not easy for me to carry it around, so I hope that it can be handed over to Chaldea for safekeeping. Wuming hadn't come into contact with the warrior transformation yet. He turned the golden sword that sealed Floros into the shape of a holy grail, hoping to hand it over to Chaldea. Chaldea's own magnetic field could block human combustion. Therefore, with the effect of Chaldea's own magnetic field, even if Wuming removed the warrior transformation, the seal of the Holy Grail would not be broken. However, Wuming's words gave Gadotzi and the others a shock. There's a demon god pillar sealed inside. Gadotzi and Matthew were stunned. According to the detection of the instrument, there is indeed something strange inside, but it is not active. Maybe it's the effect of the seal that assassin mentioned. Olga Marie was very calm. Then, from Chaldea's control room came Roman's words, "This thing is too dangerous," and so on. Then, there was another loud sound, and Roman was silent again. Well, this will be taken care of by the genius Da Vinci. Da Vinci took the Holy Grail from Wu Ming's hand. Wu Ming nodded. Although Da Vinci looked quite unreliable, he was actually a very reliable existence. Then, Wu Ming looked at Gadotzi and Matthew. Remember, you can show that scale when you ask for help. And don't forget, the first Hassan promised to help you. Matthew and Gadotzi's eyes lit up. The fact that Wang Hassan did not help at this singularity made Gadotzi complain. It turned out that he had indirectly left the opportunity to help for the next singularity. Senior Villo, will you help us too? Matthew asked curiously. Of course, I just had some matters to attend to, otherwise, I wouldn't have given you this scale. Wu Ming smiled as if it was a matter of course. Assassin and everyone were leaving. Gadotzi waved her hand and said goodbye to Wu Ming and the others. Senior Villo, see you at the next singularity, Matthew nodded to Wu Ming. I may not go to the next singularity. Don't miss a genius like me, Wu Ming smiled helplessly. Who would miss a guy like you? Whoosh, the light appeared, and the figures of Gadotzi, Matthew, and Da Vinci turned into light spots and disappeared. At the same time, Lancelot, who was immersed in the sadness of his daughter not saying goodbye to him when she left, began to glow. I'm almost at my limit. Lancelot glanced at Guinevere, then looked at Wu Ming and sighed. I'm counting on you, Master Villo. Although he did not quite understand what Lancelot meant by please, he nodded. The moment Wu Ming nodded, Lancelot turned into light and disappeared. I'm about to leave too. But don't get me wrong, Cursed Risthausen did not mean that he was leaving, but that he was going to look for the villagers. No matter what, I have to see them again before I disappear. Cursed Risthausen said goodbye to the remaining few and disappeared like an assassin. Master Villo, it's just you and me left, Guinevere smiled happily. However, Wu Ming looked at quiet Risthausen, who had no sense of presence, and smiled awkwardly. But before Wu Ming could speak, Guinevere chose to leave. The king should be gone now, so I can't be left behind. I'll go first, Master Villo, don't forget to pick me up, Guinevere finished speaking, then turned into magic particles and dissipated. Rumble, the whole world began to shake violently. It seemed that as Guinevere said, Artoria had left. Finally, quiet Risthausen walked to Wu Ming and bowed. Master Villo, thank you. Before Wu Ming could speak, quiet Risthausen also turned into magic particles and dissipated. Really, why don't you all listen to me? With a sigh, Wu Ming scratched his head helplessly. You won't leave just like that, right? As if responding to Wu Ming's words, two angels descended from the sky, one on the left and one on the right, to Wu Ming's side. Well, of course, Master, Zapril flapped her wings and smiled. As long as you don't give up on us, we will always serve you, Master, Azrael said respectfully. This time, she did not use any fancy words. It's been hard on you all this time. After all, apart from Azrael and Zapril, the other Sky Wings were basically in a berserk state and had not experienced any otherworld's fun. Master, we sisters won't blame you, meow, even in a berserk state, we still had a lot of fun, Azrael and Zapril replied to Wu Ming one after another. Then, let's leave together, Zapril, Azrael, and Abanti. Although Abanti did not have much of a presence, he had already landed on the ground, right behind Wu Ming and the other two. Rumble, as the world shook, the whole world began to repair itself, and everything returned to normal. Chapter 807. In a world that resembled a starry cosmos, patches of colorful smoke drifted about randomly, resembling the nebulas of the universe. At the very center of the dense air, on an abnormal platform that was obviously different from the surrounding things, a white dragon that was not huge in size was lying quietly on this platform. It was not breathing at all, just like a statue. But in the next moment, the dragon gasped for breath and opened its ruby-like dragon eyes. "You're back." This dragon was the clone that Wu Ming had left behind in the root. And now, Wu Ming had returned from the Middle East singularity. "Looks like this body is getting used to life here." Wu Ming looked up and sized up his body. He was very clear about the changes in this body, and it would not be long before this body would become very compatible with the root. Wu Ming then looked at the root that had changed. "The scenery around me seems to be changing freely every time." Because every time Wu Ming came to the root, the scenery was different. But there was one thing that was the same, and that was that the starry cosmos would not change. In the last singularity, only Floros and a few demon god pillars came out to cause trouble, and they hid it from Gidia. It's very likely that Gidia has not recovered from the injuries he suffered from the black mud explosion. Although Wu Ming had not recovered, and he could not even find his original body, but it was precisely because of this that Wu Ming had to hurry and find his original body. And then, before Gidia recovers, I'll kill him. It was simple and brutal. After checking the surroundings and outside of the root to make sure there was no black mud, Wu Ming reworked the root's defenses, and finally laid down without worry. "I'm overthinking. Last time, Gidia attracted all the black mud between the worlds. If I'm not mistaken, other than some worlds in Gidia's world, there shouldn't be any black mud anywhere else." Gidia was a great help, saving Wu Ming the trouble of cleaning up. "Well then, I've returned to the box court world." Closing his eyes, the gigantic dragon body fell into a deep slumber. Box court world, no name, base, Wu Ming's room. At this moment, it was night. Letitia was lying on Wu Ming's bed, sleeping with her eyes closed. Ever since Wu Ming left, Letitia had used magic to lock the room from the inside. Aside from brute force, no one could enter without Letitia's permission. And because of Wu Ming's instructions, Letitia wouldn't let anyone enter. As for Letitia, she complied with Wu Ming's words and stayed in the room. As for why, it was because Wu Ming needed a catalyst to return, and Letitia was precisely this catalyst. Fortunately, as a non-human, Letitia did not really need food. Otherwise, she would have starved to death if the room was sealed. However, it was boring to stay like this, so Letitia simply began to hibernate, whether it was day or night. Vampires could hibernate. Anyway, staying in a daze was waiting, and sleeping was also waiting. Moreover, vampires could increase their strength by going into hibernation. Although the increase was not much, why not? At this moment, the sleeping Letitia's body emitted light. The next second, Letitia instantly woke up and opened her eyes. "Is the master coming back?" Letitia said. The next second, with Letitia as the center, a complex magic circle appeared in the room. Immediately afterward, Letitia quickly sat up and took out a piece of parchment from her gift card. She injected magic into the parchment, and the parchment burned. A blue magic text appeared out of thin air, but Letitia did not recognize these words. If there was a magician present, he might be able to understand it. Because these were the summoning words of the Holy Grail War summoning ritual. When the complete summoning spell was arranged in the air, the whole magic circle suddenly emitted a light and absorbed the summoning spell into the magic circle. Then, as if it was over, the magic circle that emitted a strong light slowly disappeared. And Letitia felt that she fell into a warm embrace. "I'm back, Letitia." Holding Letitia, Wu Ming smiled slightly. As for Letitia, she changed into a more comfortable position and rubbed her head against Wu Ming's chest. "Welcome back, Master." The sun gradually rose from the sky, and the first ray of sunlight shone through the window and the curtain into the room. The little fox Lily sat up, rubbed her eyes, and yawned. As the little cook of the community, Lily has been used to getting up early. After putting on her clothes and washing up, Lily walked towards No Name's kitchen. At this time, Lily would have already gotten up to prepare food. However, because of the recent increase in the community's funds, the children of the community could eat well, so Lily did not have to get up early to prepare food for the hungry children. So, Lily also slept a little bit longer. It's all thanks to the blessing of the Villo. Lily's tail wagged as she walked to the kitchen door. Then, she smelled a special fragrance. Sniff, it smells so good. The fragrance is coming from the kitchen and the dining room, but Wren, Black Rabbit, and 16 Knights are not in the community. Who is it? With this thought, Lily pushed open the kitchen door and wanted to find out. In front of the stove, a handsome young man with black hair and red eyes was pouring the cooked dishes into a plate, and a blonde loli was carrying 2 plates. It seemed that they were going to the dining room. However, these 2 people gave Lily a shock. Mr. Villo. Mr. Letitia. Are you back? Lily was excited and quickly walked to the front of the 2 people. Oh, it's Lily, we just came back last night. When we passed by the kitchen, my hands were a little itchy. Don't blame me for taking your job, Wu-Ming said gently. You came at the right time, Lily, help carry the plates. Letitia did not treat Lily as an outsider and immediately asked Lily to help. Oh. Okay. Lily was a little surprised by the sudden return of the 2 people who had been away for a while, but it was because of surprise that she was happy. Helping to carry the plates, Lily looked at Letitia. Mr. Villo, Mr. Letitia, you won't leave again this time, right? Looking at Lily's expectant face, Letitia glanced at Wu-Ming, indicating that she would let Wu-Ming explain. I'm sorry, Lily, I may leave again. Wu-Ming squatted down and looked at Lily apologetically. How could this be? Lily was a little disappointed. But Letitia won't leave. Really? That's great. Even if only Letitia didn't leave, it was enough to make Lily happy. However, Letitia stared at Wu-Ming with dead fish eyes to express her dissatisfaction. I didn't leave at all, okay? Pretending not to see Letitia's dead fish eyes, Wu-Ming smiled. After carrying the plates, go and wake everyone up. The food won't taste good when it's cold, yes, Mr. Villo. Chapter 808. After having breakfast with the children, Wu-Ming, Letitia, and Lily went to the meeting room that was often used to discuss matters. They asked Lily where the others went. Mr. 16 Knights and the others went to the Southern District. Lily told Wu-Ming that after Wu-Ming left, No Name was invited by the Southern District's Community Alliance, Dragonhorn Griffin Lion, to participate in the upcoming Harvest Festival because of its reliable strength. Because the community had the magic puppets and Lily, there was no need for anyone to stay behind to look after them. Ren, Black Rabbit, 16 Knights, Joyuen Flying Bird, and Kasuga Hibiya all went. How long has it been since they left? After all, he had to figure out how long he had been gone. About 5 or 6 days. To be honest, I didn't expect Mr. Villo and Letitia to come back so soon. Lily's little fox tail wagged. She was quite satisfied that Wu-Ming could come back so soon. Wu-Ming was stunned. If he remembered correctly, he had stayed in the Middle East Singularity for 5 or 6 days. The flow of time was the same, so it should be different. What was going on? Noticing that Wu-Ming had something on his mind, Letitia thought that Wu-Ming was worried that 16 Knights and the others would cause trouble in the Southern District. Master, do you want to go over and take a look? Letitia, who was standing behind Wu-Ming and had changed into a blue and white maid uniform, asked in a timely manner. Forget it. Let them cause trouble over there. Wu-Ming shrugged. He would rather be idle in the Eastern District. Since he was in this world, he should deal with the matters of this world first. Then, Wu-Ming asked about Pest. Speaking of which, what happened to Pest? Wuming left in a hurry and didn't have time to deal with the matters after the Fire Dragon's birth festival. They had agreed that the defeated Demon King would belong to No Name. Regarding this matter, Mr. Villo, please don't worry. After all, Lord White Yiksha is very fair. Although White Yiksha was not serious in the eyes of Wuming and the others, she was actually a very dignified existence in the Eastern District and even the entire Hakata. Since she had agreed to something, she would do it. After all, this was something that had been decided before. Even if Salamandra wanted to go back on their word, White Yiksha wouldn't allow it. Besides, Salamandra couldn't go back on their word. After all, Salamandra won't stand on the opposite side of us just because of a mere 5-digit Demon King. Moreover, No Name has just re-established an alliance with them. However, Lily showed a distressed expression. However, Lord Vero, because the members of the community have all gone to the South District, our Lord Demon King is still with Lord White Yiksha. Wuming was Yiksha was Yiksha was White Yiksha was White Yiksha was White Yiksha's. It would definitely take some time for White Yiksha to deal with Pest's matter, and it just so happened that the rest of No Name had gone to South Side. In the absence of the main members, Lily couldn't make the decision on her own. Then, Lily showed a reassuring smile. Since Lord Villo is back, there won't be a problem. After all, Wuming was the main member. It was reasonable for him to take the spoils from White Yiksha. Then, Wuming sighed and cancelled his original plan. Okay, Letitia and I will go. Eastern District, 2105380 Outer Gate, Thous and Yes, Branch. Inside the Japanese-style shop, White Yiksha knelt on a cushion, leisurely drinking tea and eating snacks. She looked quite relaxed. Suddenly, a black-purple ripple appeared beside White Yiksha out of thin air. Glancing at the black-purple ripple, White Yiksha still calmly drank his tea. Wuming and Letitia walked out of the portal. Wuming casually found a cushion and sat next to White Yiksha. Letitia, the maid, seemed to be infected by her master. She also found a cushion and knelt next to Wuming. Wuming picked up White Yiksha's snack and threw it into his mouth. It was as if he treated this place as his own home. Sigh, don't say, this snack is not bad. Right? This snack is a precious snack that I, White Yiksha, treasure. White Yiksha nodded subconsciously. Let's have some too, Letitia. Wuming picked up another piece of dessert and passed it to Letitia. Hey! You brat! Don't treat this place as your own home. White Yiksha unhappily put the plate with a few remaining snacks into his arms with a "I won't let you eat anymore" look. Looking at you, people who don't know would think that I did something to you. Wuming didn't even look at White Yiksha. He maintained his sideways posture and raised his hand holding the snack to feed Letitia. Letitia was a bit resistant. After all, she was Wuming's maid. How could she let her master feed his maid? However, she had to give Wuming face. Therefore, Letitia ate in small bites. After all, from the beginning, Wuming didn't treat Letitia as a maid. Instead, he treated Letitia as a little girl who liked to play maid games. You are quite leisurely and elegant to be intimate with your little maid. Poor Ren and the others are still fighting for the community in the Southern District. White Yiksha quickly finished the few snacks on the plate and said viciously to Wuming. Letitia's face turned red. However, because of her master's thick skin, her face also became thicker. Don't think that I don't know. You must have known that Letitia and I temporarily left No Name a few days ago. After feeding, Wuming patted the snack crumbs on his hand and looked at White Yiksha again. I'm here to take away the spoils of war belonging to our No Name, White Yiksha, MHM. Following Wuming's drawn-out MHM, Wuming extended his hand at the same time, not at all courteous to White Yiksha. Seeing this, White Yiksha stopped joking with Wuming and became serious. Demon King, I've prepared it, but I thought that Ren would take it. You mean Ren's gift, right? Ren Russell had the elf servant. He could perfectly control the spirit race that formed a contract with him, regardless of their spiritual level. But because I'm the only one in No Name at the moment, Lily recommended me. Wuming spread his hands helplessly. If he couldn't beat it, he could take it back and give it to Ren. Forget it. In the current situation, even if I give it to Ren, I'm afraid it won't be of much help to No Name. White Yiksha said as he took out his gift card and took out a ring from it. However, Wuming was puzzled by White Yiksha's words. What happened? Facing Wuming's puzzlement, White Yiksha sighed. Pest's strength was affected and decreased a lot. Chapter 809. Decreased by a lot. Wuming subconsciously repeated. Could it be that there was an accident during the resummoning? Although Pest was indeed killed by Wuming at that time, due to the rules of the Box Court, the ownership of the defeated Demon King belonged to the community that defeated the Demon King. Therefore, according to the rules of the Box Court, White Yiksha's 1000 EIS could resummon him to the Box Court world. Because he knew this, Wuming didn't hesitate to use Yggdrasil to pierce through Pest. This Demon King's strength has decreased to the bottom of the 5 digits and will soon fall to the 6th. White Yiksha said and threw a ring to Wuming. Subconsciously catching it, Wuming carefully looked at the ring. This ring seemed to be made of sparkling and translucent black jade, and it exuded a profound aura. Could it be because I didn't use Hamel's grimoire as a sacrifice? That's right. White Yiksha nodded. When Pest was the Black Death Spot Demon King, she had the buff of Hamel's Town summoned by Hamel's grimoire, and her strength had reached the upper 5 digits. Without this buff, Pest was just an undead girl at the bottom of the 5 digits. And Hamel's grimoire was all shattered when Pest made her final struggle. Without these grimoires, even if Pest was resummoned, her strength wouldn't recover to when she was the Black Death Spot Demon King. Looking at Letitia, Wuming smiled slightly. I have an idea. Wuming did have a way to increase the strength of his possession. That was to use his own spawn and sign a contract with Pest. This way, the powerful strength Wuming brought as the master would affect Pest, who was his spawn. Letitia's strength greatly increased because she signed a contract with Wuming. But even so, Letitia had only recovered to her previous strength, which was around the middle of the 4 digits. If Letitia's lost divinity was found, her strength would probably increase by another level. You mean like Letitia? White Yiksha rubbed her chin. She had heard that Wuming had the ability to turn others into his spawn. But I don't know if Pest is willing. After all, Wuming didn't like to force others. You're wrong, Master. However, Letitia objected to Wuming's idea. The moment Pest was defeated, she no longer had any so-called human rights. The Demon King belonged to the community that defeated her. This was the rule of the box world. No one could ignore this rule, even if White Yiksha, who was in the box's top 10. Pest's human rights have already disappeared. She has failed and is now just an object. I think she should be aware of this as well, so you don't have to worry too much. 3 years ago, when Letitia was taken away as a spoil of war, she also had the same awareness. Be that as it may, I, your master, am not a devil. If No Name was in urgent need of a powerhouse, then Wuming might force Pest to sign a contract. But this choice was impossible from the start. Because with Wuming around, No Name didn't need to be in such a hurry. In addition, who asked Wuming to be kind-hearted, in a way? Letitia still wanted to say something. But Wuming immediately interrupted her. Let's just leave it at that. We'll decide after we ask Pest. Letitia showed a helpless expression. But then, Letitia's helpless expression turned into a smile. Because such strength was also the embodiment of her master's charisma. If that's the case, you should leave. I want to rest. Then, White Yiksha waved his hand in disdain, signaling Wu Ming and Letitia to leave. He also lay down with his back facing the two and supported his head with one hand. Wu Ming handed the ring in his hand to Letitia, opened a portal, and signaled Letitia to go back first. Knowing that Wu Ming had other matters to discuss with White Yiksha, Letitia obediently took the ring and entered the portal. Do you have something else to say? White Yiksha closed his eyes and asked without turning his head. I want to ask about the two-headed dragon that appeared at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony. As soon as he said this, White Yiksha opened his golden eyes that had become extremely serious. I thought you went out to investigate this matter. I didn't expect you to ask me. White Yiksha turned over and sat up straight. Although they hadn't known each other for long, White Yiksha still understood Wu Ming. Wu Ming wasn't the kind of person who would investigate thoroughly before asking others. Therefore, since he asked, it meant that Wu Ming really didn't know. I naturally left for other matters. However, since I'm back, I will naturally pay attention to the matter at hand. The inexplicable appearance of the two-headed dragon was a very serious problem. If it happened again and appeared in the city, the consequences would be unimaginable. No, if it appeared in the periphery of the East District, it would also be a serious problem. This was because the two-headed dragon was powerful and had a large number of people. Furthermore, they had a powerful splitting ability. If they appeared in the periphery and charged into the East District, there would be a lot of casualties. This was because no one could stop it, not even White Yiksha. After all, White Yiksha was in a state where most of his power was sealed. Unfortunately, I've asked the community in charge of the seal. The seal is very complete. Therefore, the possibility of the two-headed dragon splitting from the Demon King has been ruled out. Ever since the fire dragon's birth ceremony ended, White Yiksha hadn't been idle. Or rather, it was impossible for her to be idle. Then, those two-headed dragons should be the remnants of Az Dakaha before he was sealed. The key is, how did those two-headed dragons suddenly appear near the fire dragon's birth ceremony? If they were far away, there was no need to be afraid of actively preparing. What was scary was the fact that they appeared out of thin air. Regarding this, even she, White Yiksha, couldn't find any useful information. Appearing out of thin air, Wu Ming, on the other hand, had some ideas. Because I'm worried that the previous situation will happen again, I specifically asked the community in the East District to increase their vigilance. In the end, White Yiksha sighed. This was because White Yiksha knew that this was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. After thinking for a while, Wu Ming spoke. Actually, some time ago, I met with some people who wanted to buy Letitia from Perseus. The main point wasn't this sentence, but Wu Ming's next sentence. One of them had the ability to teleport out of thin air that shocked even me. That person was none other than the guy named Maxwell. Chapter 8:10. That was a man who called himself Maxwell. He appeared beside me out of thin air. While I was distracted, he teleported away his companion who was suppressed by me. In the end, I fought him. I estimate that he's a 4-digit existence. 4 digits. White Yiksha nodded. A 4-digit existence was already the peak of the lower levels of the box court. Such an existence couldn't be unknown. However, no matter how hard White Yiksha thought, he couldn't figure out who this Maxwell fellow was. Actually, a group of two-headed dragons appeared out of thin air and attacked me. The moment I killed those two-headed dragons, Maxwell rescued his companion, Wu Ming continued. What? He wasn't surprised by Maxwell's rescue, but by the two-headed dragons. Are you trying to say that the two-headed dragon army at the fire dragon's birth ritual has something to do with that fellow named Maxwell? They had both appeared out of thin air, and the interval between them wasn't long. No one would believe that the fire dragon's birth ritual had nothing to do with Maxwell. A 4-digit existence with the ability to teleport multiple people or objects instantly. It seemed like he had a large number of absolute evil avatars and an organization backing him. If these were looked at separately, they weren't considered dangerous, but if they were gathered together, it was rather dangerous. If that organization did something again, it would cause a serious crisis to the lower levels of the box court, even though it wouldn't exceed what the lower levels of the box court could withstand. This was something White Yiksha, who was a guardian of the box court, didn't wish to see. That Maxwell's companion, do you know their names or abilities? There's an unknown girl who's good at using daggers and has the gift of distance control. There's also a griffin named Glea Griffin, which has a powerful physical ability that far surpasses that of ordinary griffins. Their master is called Your Highness by the girl. Lastly, there's Maxwell. That's all I know. After handing over the information to White Yiksha, he would rely on White Yiksha's abilities to see if he could find any clues about the other party. After all, there was one thing Wu Ming didn't say: the other party knew him. No matter what, his main body definitely had a lot to do with the other party. This was also the main reason why Wu Ming took the initiative to look for White Yiksha. I got it. Next, I'll start searching with the information I have. White Yiksha wasn't confident that he could find the other party. After all, it was too obvious. Whether it was the other party's grace or name, he had never heard of them before. He was either a newcomer to the box or someone who had always been active in the world outside the box. White Yiksha was more inclined to the latter. Then I'll take my leave first. Don't forget to let me know if anything happens. Wu Ming waved his hand and prepared to leave. Lord White Yiksha, something bad has happened. At this moment, a maid named Thousand Eyes suddenly barged in. Seeing that White Yiksha was discussing something with Wu Ming, the maid couldn't help but stop. However, it was obvious that she seemed to have something urgent. Why are you so flustered? Speak slowly. White Yiksha took a sip of tea and motioned for the maid to calm down. Wu Ming, who was about to leave, saw the maid so flustered, but he wasn't in a hurry to leave. He wanted to see if he could help the other party. Not good, Lord White Yiksha. There was an urgent message from the community just now. A large number of magical beasts have appeared around the outer gate of 2105380 and are heading this way. Although the maid had calmed down, there was still a trace of panic. Wu Ming frowned. The outer area of 2105380's outer gate was basically no-names territory. Furthermore, it was a sudden appearance, and it just so happened that he chose the outer door of 2105380. Was he trying to show off his power to no-name? Wu Ming thought so. It's just magical beasts. Let the community at the periphery resist for a while. I'll go take a look. White Yiksha didn't mind and slowly prepared to finish his tea. Although this matter was very strange, the Eastern District's defense wasn't something that could be broken through by some magical beasts. It couldn't be that Maxwell's doing. How could there be such a coincidence? But, Lord White Yiksha, those magical beasts are estimated to be in the 5 digits and that community is. The maid said carefully while looking at Wu Ming. It should be the news from Letitia who had just returned. Pfft, what? White Yiksha, who heard, in the 5 digits, spat out a mouthful of tea. No wonder the maid was so flustered. Did Letitia simply say that there was an attack by magical beasts? Wu Ming immediately asked the maid. Because the two-headed dragon was the clone of Az Dakaha, one of the oldest demon king humans in the final trial, in order to prevent people from panicking, other than some of the higher-ups of Salamandra, No Name, and This and Yes who knew the inside story, news about the two-headed dragon was blocked. Therefore, even if there were rumors in the outside world, it was only a backup plan brought by the demon king who attacked the fire dragon's birth ceremony. It didn't attract attention or panic. Yes. The maid nodded. As expected of a former box court knight, it looked like Letitia was also trying her best to block the news. After all, it was definitely the clone of a demon king. It was a little too much for the citizens of the box court. Then, Wu Ming and White Yiksha looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with solemnity. Previously, they were still discussing what to do if someone used the two-headed dragon to attack the Eastern District. Now, it was here. It was really, speak of the devil. At the same time, Wu Ming and White Yiksha also felt the tremors of the earth from the two-headed dragon. How many two-headed dragons did it take to cause such a magnitude of earthquake? Without further ado, Wu Ming immediately opened the teleportation door. Let's go, White Yiksha. White Yiksha nodded with a gloomy expression and walked into the teleportation door with Wu Ming, leaving behind the maid who was at a loss. 2105-380 Outer Gate, where No Name was located. In the vast wilderness, magic puppets were arranged into several layers. They stood at the outermost periphery as if they were defending against something. Letitia probably ordered the magic puppets to form such a wall to defend against the two-headed dragons. The children of No Name were nowhere to be seen. Wu Ming used his spiritual power to probe and found that the children were in No Name's house. Letitia was beside the children, comforting them. Not far away, a large group of white figures was rapidly advancing. It was the white two-headed dragons on all fours. There are actually so many clones of human evil. White Yiksha's originally gloomy expression became even gloomier. Moreover, the number this time far exceeded the number of two-headed dragons that appeared during the fire dragon's birth ceremony. Relying on the current White Yiksha, it was impossible for him to eliminate so many two-headed dragons in an instant. If he couldn't completely eliminate them and one of them broke into the outer gate, it would be a catastrophe for 2105-380 Outer Gate. If he wanted to get rid of them in one go, White Yiksha might not be able to continue staying at the lower level of the box court. However, the other communities aside, No Name, which was at the outermost periphery, was the first to bear the brunt. Therefore, let me do it this time, White Yiksha. Wu Ming's eyes were filled with anger. Without a doubt, the other party was targeting No Name this time. The other party probably knew that No Name's main force was not in the community, so he dared to do whatever he wanted. However, the other party did not expect that Wu Ming had already returned. Chapter 8:11. Wu Ming stretched out his hand, his eyes turning golden as he began chanting. I will deny the sky, deny the earth. The storm will destroy everything, and the rain will cover everything. With this supreme divine power, I will make everything in heaven and earth bow and kneel. Instantly, the sky darkened as dark clouds gathered. The cold wind was biting cold. It seemed slow, but it quickly condensed into a tornado that descended from the sky. This is... The sharp-eyed White Yiksha could tell at a glance that the ability Wu Ming used came from God. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the storm landed in the middle of the twin-headed dragons. Many twin-headed dragons were swept up and flew into the tornado. In the blink of an eye, they were crushed. They couldn't even scream. The fresh blood produced by the crushed twin-headed dragons turned into new twin-headed dragons, but these new twin-headed dragons were instantly crushed again. Then, new twin-headed dragons were born and crushed again until they couldn't split anymore. However, because he had to be wary of his surroundings, Wu Ming didn't use much strength in the tornado he controlled. The tornado was small and its suction was weak. It only sucked in the twin-headed dragons in the middle. As expected, I can't let go at all here. White Yiksha naturally understood Wu Ming's concerns. If she were to do it, she might not be as good as Wu Ming. Don't you have that inherent barrier? Can't you transfer them all over at once? White Yiksha still remembered that at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony, it was Wu who transferred a large group of twin-headed dragons into the inherent barrier. In the end, White Yiksha used Sun sovereignty to finish off those twin-headed dragons in one go. There's no need to go through so much trouble. As Wuming spoke, his golden eyes were still open as he stretched out his other hand. God says, humans are sinful. God says, humans need to be purified. Thus, I will send the monstrous flood to my body. In the name of the Supreme King, I will bestow the world with equal liberation. After another chant, a stream of water came out of nowhere and floated around the two-headed dragons, forming a thick circular wall of water. The two-headed dragons were at a loss, and they were tightly encircled. It's not over yet. Wuming shouted, and the hand he stretched out behind him instantly clenched into a fist. Instantly, the ring-shaped water flow seemed to shrink, pushing the two-headed dragons towards the center. The two-headed dragons began to attack the water wall in an attempt to rush out, but the moment they came into contact with the water wall, they were sucked in. As if the internal and external pressure were different, the two-headed dragon that was sucked into the water wall was also torn apart, and the two-headed dragon was forced to retreat towards the center. However, the center wasn't a good place either. Unknowingly, the tornado had suddenly become stronger. Together with the circular wall of water, the two-headed dragon that was gradually approaching the center was completely engulfed by the tornado. Wuming placed his palms together, and the circular wall of water attached itself to the tornado. It was as if the tornado had put on a layer of water. Finally, he clasped his hands together. The water merged into the tornado, forming a magnificent waterspout. In the waterspout, the twin-headed dragons were torn apart again and again, and the new twin-headed dragons produced by the blood were the same. It was like a meat grinder. Slowly, the last twin-headed dragon whose blood couldn't split was torn apart, and at that moment, the blue waterspout turned red. In the end, the twin-headed dragon's blood couldn't continue to split into new twin-headed dragons, and the blood dyed the waterspout a bright red color. Thou hast violated the contract and brought evil to the world. Lord's Day, sinners shall be punished. Shatter their backs, dig out their tendons, bones, hair, and brains, and trample on their blood and mud. If I am the one who cannot approach the darkness, I will follow the Lord's words and destroy thee. Another chant was uttered, and a black sphere appeared in Wuming's hand. Wuming gently tossed it, and the black sphere flew towards the waterspout. The waterspout that was still spinning continuously sucked the black sphere formed by the annihilation incarnation into it. The moment the black sphere was sucked in, it began to emit a black light, like a black hole, or rather, a black hole. Suddenly, the entire waterspout was sucked in by the light emitted by the black sphere, as if it had really entered a black hole. In just a few seconds, the blood-colored waterspout disappeared, completely annihilated. Finally, Wuming snapped his fingers, and the black sphere floating in the sky was completely shattered with a bang. Bits of black magic power crystals scattered in the sky until they disappeared. The crisis that threatened No Name and even the East Borough was resolved. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. After that, seeing that the crisis was resolved, White Yiksha didn't compliment Wuming and quickly left. I'm going to contact the rulers of the other regions and have a good discussion about this incident. It seemed that the threat to the East Borough this time made White Yiksha unable to sit still. She was worried that it would affect the entire box court. Wuming, on the other hand, said that he had to return to No Name to check on the children's situation. As expected of Master, you easily destroyed the avatar of absolute evil. Letitia was the first to welcome him. In the face of Letitia's compliment, Wuming didn't mind. Are the children all right? From the traces on No Name's land, it could be seen that the children were renovating the land at that time. Perhaps they were preparing for the crops that 16th Night and the others brought back. They're fine. Lily and I have been comforting the children. Even though the crisis was resolved, Letitia didn't let the children out. Instead, she continued to stay in the house and rest for a while. They've all grown up and didn't panic. They're sensible and obedient. Letitia revealed a motherly expression. Your motherly expression really shouldn't appear on your lowly face. Wuming pulled Letitia's little face, causing Letitia to look at Wuming in dissatisfaction. Even if it's master, if you play with me wantonly, I'll still be angry. However, when Wuming stopped pulling and changed to touching her cheek, Letitia still rubbed against him in enjoyment. At the very least, you have to ask for my permission. This made Wuming not know whether to laugh or cry. What's with your arrogant tone? And don't forget, Letitia belongs to me. She has no human rights. The phrase, no human rights, was something that Letitia had said to Pest not long ago. In the end, Wuming used it to describe Letitia. Master, you're so annoying. Letitia curled her lips expressionlessly. However, in Wuming's eyes, it was quite cute. Anyway, she didn't realize it. After playing with Letitia for a while, Wuming became serious. Get ready, Letitia. Facing Letitia's doubtful gaze, Wuming explained. This attack isn't targeted at No Name, but the entire East District. No Name is just incidental. Wuming turned to look at the horizon. I'm safe here, but what if the same thing happens to other districts? Letitia's eyes suddenly shrank. Master, you mean, this is an attack targeting the entire district? Chapter 8:12. Wuming didn't care about Letitia's shock. It does seem that way. But Wuming's answer made Letitia, who wasn't stupid, realize that there was more to it than meets the eye. Master, you mean, these attacks are only on the surface? Letitia's expression became serious. If the attacks that affected the entire box were only on the surface, then what was hidden underneath the surface, how shocking would it be? At least that's what I think. Then, Wuming looked at the magic puppet that was still standing in the distance. I'm going to fix No Name's defense. Letitia, go rest for a while. Later, come with me to find White Yiksha. Uncovering this layer of mystery was important, but the safety of No Name was more important. Yes, Master. Letitia nodded. But then, Letitia was stunned. What about Pest? As she spoke, Letitia took out Pest's summoning ring that Wuming gave her. I almost forgot. Lightly touching his chin, Wuming thought about how to deal with Pest. Wuming and Letitia didn't need Pest's power, but currently, the main members of No Name weren't here, and Wuming hadn't been to the southern district, so he couldn't find them in a short period of time. He had to immediately let Pest become a fighting force. How about letting Lily wear this ring? Wuming said tentatively as he and Letitia looked at each other. After a while, in No Name's meeting room, a scream suddenly came out. What? The scream, full of girlish energy, made the birds on the roof all fly away. No. No. Lily can't. The little fox girl Lily's face was red. She put her hands in front of her chest and couldn't help but step back. Slowly, Lily was forced into a corner. Then, Lily's body leaned against the wall and slid to the ground. No is no, but... Wuming calmly took a sip of the tea that Letitia made and looked at Lily who was hiding in the corner. Why do you have to look like you've met a bad person? Letitia, who was standing behind Wuming, helped Wuming complain. After Wuming suggested that Lily use the summoning ring, Lily showed such a state. In short, Lily can't. Lily, who was sitting on the ground, kept shaking her head. Master Villo and Lady Letitia are both here, why do you want Lily to use the summoning ring? Lily's face was a bit unnatural. It wasn't that she hated the devil, but Lily felt that she would waste of this power. Since Lily doesn't agree, then let's change our method. Letitia was still very soft-hearted towards the children of no name. After all, Lily was still a child. If possible, Letitia really didn't want a child like Ren to stand out. Actually, this is what I'm thinking. Lily has been staying in no name all this time. For now, letting her use Pest's ring is the best solution. Wuming finished the tea in his cup and put it down. But since Lily is unwilling, I'll change my plan. Wuming's words made Lily sigh in relief. Although she felt that she couldn't bear the devil's power and would waste this power, if there was really no other way, Lily was willing to accept and work hard to motivate herself. But since there was another way, it was the best. Master, do you have any other ideas? Letitia felt that her master was omnipotent. I know of a ritual that can use a holy relic to summon the clone of a deceased person called a heroic spirit. Holy relic. Heroic spirit. Heroic spirit. Clone. Letitia and Lily were confused. The box court world didn't seem to have the concept of holy relic and heroic spirit. Simply put, it's using an antique to summon a spirit. By the way, I can be considered as a summoned spirit right now. Is that Lord Villo dead? Lily's face instantly became sad. But Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry and shook his head. I'm here to find my body. I'm not dead. Calm down, Lily. Right. Right. Lily's cheeks became red again because of embarrassment. Because Wuming was too much like a normal person, Lily forgot that Wuming was actually a spirit. Behind Wuming, Letitia's cheeks also became red. She also subconsciously ignored her master's identity. In short, if you use the ring that summons Pest as a holy relic, the success rate of summoning Pest is not 100%, but at least 99%. After all, that ring was used to summon Pest. There was no reason for the summoning to fail. Then, Wuming took out the ring to summon Pest. Moreover, Pest summoned as a heroic spirit might be able to increase his strength. And this would solve the problem of Pest's strength. Of course, the specifics would only be known after the summoning. Wuming started drawing a magic circle in the meeting room. The materials used were naturally from No Name's warehouse. Although No Name wasn't particularly rich now, it was still considered to be in the middle class. He melted the gemstones with special magic to obtain the gemstone solution. Then, he added it into the blood of the griffin to draw the magic circle. There were no fancy operations. It was just a simple drawing of the magic circle. Then, Wuming placed the ring used to summon Pest in the palm of his hand and began to chant the summoning oath. Declare. In an instant, Wuming, who was standing in front of the magic circle, poured his magic into the magic circle. The whole room darkened. Letitia and Lily, who were watching from the side, revealed solemn expressions. Thou shalt hear my command. Thy sword is with me. Answer my summons immediately. Just like the magic circle, Wuming's oath to summon Pest was also simple. Instantly, the magic circle and the ring on Wuming's hand lit up at the same time. Then, Wuming increased the amount of magic he poured into the magic circle. Gradually, the magic circle and the ring became brighter and brighter. Lily, who was the weakest in the room, couldn't help but cover her eyes. When the light reached its peak, the whole room seemed to have come to a standstill. Then, as if something had leaked, a sound was heard. Puff! The whole room was filled with smoke. Letitia hurriedly shielded Lily, afraid that she would be hurt. However, the smoke was actually the magic gas from the griffin's blood that had been added with gemstone solution. At this moment, the magic circle that was covered by the smoke stopped shining. The same went for the ring on Wuming's hand. Wuming waved his hand and the magic gas was instantly blown away, revealing the magic circle and the petite figure standing in it. Wuming smiled at this. Success. Chapter 8:13. Standing in the middle of the magic circle that had dried up, Pest slowly opened his dark red eyes that symbolized the Black Death. Avenger, Pest, at your command, my master. Pest looked expressionlessly at Wu Ming, who was standing in front of him, as if he was speaking subconsciously. The reason why it was subconscious was because Pest was obviously stunned when he said those words. The expression on his face was as if he was saying, "What am I talking about?" Sure enough, it worked. The magic circle that summoned Pest was modified by Wu Ming, and it was the same magic circle that Wu Ming used when he returned. Although Wu Ming had no problem using it on himself, Wu Ming was worried that something might go wrong if he used it on Pest. Moreover, because the summoning circle was modified by Wu Ming according to the box court world, Wu Ming and Pest's state were more like heroic spirits than servants. In fact, there was not much difference. After all, Pest was not a living person, but a ghost. And Pest, who was summoned through a special method, was still not a living person, but still a ghost. However, because of the summoning ritual, Pest's various abilities were greatly improved. Your current state is actually 4 digits. Wu Ming was shocked when he felt Pest's aura. 4 digits. Lily, who heard Wu Ming's words, was shocked. After all, 4 digits was already the highest level in the box court world. Because it was an unorthodox summoning ritual in the box court world, Wu Ming as the master could not check Pest's attributes as a master. However, it was still possible for Wu Ming to check the number of people without any concealment through their aura. Master, didn't you say that Pest's strength might increase because of the ceremony? Letitia could also sense Pest's level. She was also a 4-digit number, so she could also sense Pest's level. Although that's true, this increase is too exaggerated. Wu Ming was quite puzzled. From 5 digits to 6 digits, it rose all the way to 4 digits. Although a 4-digit number was at the bottom, Pastor was indeed a 4-digit number. The phoenix tail was much more powerful than the chicken head because this was a qualitative change. I think it might be because of Master that my strength increased so much. Pest looked at Wu Ming with a hint of fear in his eyes. A servant's attributes were affected by their master. The stronger the master, the stronger the servant's attributes would be. Pest was indeed summoned as a servant, but it was not because of the extra power that Pest gained from being a servant, but because Wu Ming had established a master-servant relationship with Pest. Although Wu Ming might not be aware of this, Pest had a very deep impact on him. Originally, Wordless had only given Pest the impression that he was an expert who could defeat him. Now, Wordless gave Pest the impression that he was a god. Pest looked at the scene before him. A dragon was crawling in the universe filled with dense chi. Every breath he took gave Pest immense pressure. Gradually, the dragon's breathing stabilized and his eyelids twitched. Slowly, the dragon's eyes opened a sliver. Just the twitching of its eyelids made Pest feel fear. The opening of its eyes greatly affected Pest's mind. It was as if his brain had been stirred into a mess. Pester suspected that if he waited for the dragon to fully awaken and look at him with its huge dragon eyes, he might lose his mind. Fortunately, the moment the dragon fully opened its eyes, Pest was summoned and stood in the center of the magic formation. The moment Pest was summoned, he learned some information about Wu Ming through the contract he had with Wu Ming. But because of this, Pest was so obedient and looked at Wu Ming with eyes full of fear. However, Wu Ming did not notice Pest's fear of him. He was interested in what Pest said. You know that the master's strength can affect the servant's strength. Is this knowledge from the summoning ritual? The only reason Pest knew that the strength of the master could affect the strength of the servant was because of the Holy Grail's knowledge. However, there was no Holy Grail in this world. How could such knowledge be imparted to Pest? Pest, how do you know this? I learned it from you, Master, Pest answered honestly. The moment she formed the contract with Wu Ming, not only did Pest see the universe Wu Ming brought to her, but she also learned some knowledge about the Holy Grail War from Wu Ming. Memory sharing. But this kind of situation will only happen when you're asleep. It was common knowledge that the master would dream of the servant's past. If the servant was asleep, the servant would also dream of the master's past. This was a result of the contract, and it was mutual. When Pest is not summoned, she should be asleep, Letitia suddenly said. But facing Letitia's question, Pest was very reluctant, but in the end, she nodded honestly. After Pest was killed, she was indeed in a state of hibernation. That's not right. I only know the knowledge. It's impossible for me to only know the knowledge in my dreams. There must be something else. Wuming frowned and squinted at Pest. Pest, you should have something else you haven't said, right? In just an instant, Pest's face turned pale. She did not say a word, and even her body stiffened. Wuming's words reminded her of the dragon she saw before. The way Wuming squinted his eyes was very similar to the dragon. Pest was once again sure that Wuming was the mysterious dragon. Master, Pest seems to be frightened by you. Letitia poked Wuming's back. That seems to be the case. Wuming naturally saw Pest's pale face and stiff body. Is it because I look so scary? He could not help but touch his face. No matter how he touched it, it was still a handsome face. How could he scare Pest? Forget it. We'll talk about it when you feel like it. Wuming shrugged. Although he did not know the reason, it was not a bad thing for the current situation. That's it for now. Pest, stay in No Name and get used to your power. But remember, do not attack your companions. I got it. Pest nodded. His stiff body and pale face were no longer as pale as before. Even if she had 10 times the courage, she would not dare to do anything. After all, Wuming's influence on her was too deep. Chapter 8:14. After settling Pest down, Wuming checked No Name's magic puppet. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Wuming left some rune magic on the ground around No Name. Originally, Wuming wanted to set up some magic traps directly, but Wuming would feel bad if unrelated people fell for them. Therefore, Wuming changed it to detection magic. If he sensed any strange people or things, Wuming would immediately use the portal to return. Of course, Wuming felt that there shouldn't be any more enemies in the near future. After all, the enemy's goal wasn't No Name, but something else. However, to be cautious, Wuming still did so. After checking again that there were no mistakes, Wuming opened the portal and returned to No Name's meeting room. Pest returned to her assigned room alone. Before familiarizing herself with her body's strength, she needed to recover her spirit. After all, the giant dragon in her dream had affected her too much. On the other hand, Lily and the other children of No Name began to work again. After all, the children of No Name had all suffered before, and this made them even more restless. However, because of Wuming's instructions, they didn't go outside. Instead, they worked in the room, such as cleaning. Only Letitia was waiting for Wuming in the meeting room. Master, are the preparations complete? Letitia, who was sitting on the sofa and waiting for Wuming, immediately got up when she saw Wuming arrive. Okay, let's go. Letitia, let's go find White Yiksha. Yes, Master. 2105380 Outer Gate, inside the Thousand Yes branch. White Yiksha sat there with a distressed look on his face. His arms were crossed in front of his chest as if he was waiting for someone. Black and purple ripples appeared out of thin air, and Wuming walked out with Letitia. You're finally here. Seeing the person he was looking forward to, White Yiksha's restless face relaxed a little. Look at you. Did you get some bad news? It was still the same cushion as before. Wuming directly pulled it over and unceremoniously sat in front of White Yiksha. I just received news that the West, North, and South districts were also attacked by Absolute Evil's avatar. What? Letitia, who was sitting beside Wuming, was shocked. Her master was right. This is bad news. However, from the looks of it, the two-headed dragon army in the other districts should have been dealt with. Wuming wasn't surprised at all. He was rather calm. It's all been dealt with. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here waiting for you. Although White Yiksha was the ruler of the East District, she would take action if there was a disaster that affected the entire Hakata. Of course, it was the same for the other guardians. Then, the situation in the other districts and eyes is in eyes. Be in the eyes, Letitia said Letitia's in eyes. According to Wuming's understanding, the class ruler of the West seemed to be a cadre of thousand eyes, but Wuming didn't know the details. Noticing the confusion on Wuming's face, Letitia explained for Wuming. Master, the class ruler of the West that Lady White Yiksha mentioned is called Demon Laplace. He's one of the cadre of thousand eyes. Due to his ability, he has been in a deep slumber. White Yiksha spoke as well. Letitia's ability is actually referring to his powerful prophetic ability. Could it be the cadre of thousand eyes who predicted that a demon king would attack Fire Dragon's birth ritual? Wuming suddenly thought. Being a cadre of thousand eyes and having prophetic abilities made it easy for people to associate him with the cadre of thousand eyes who had given a 100% accurate prophecy. That's right. The prophecy of Fire Dragon's birth ritual was given by him. However, that fellow is in a deep slumber all year round, so there's no need to pay attention to him. In short, nothing major happened in the West because of his unexpected awakening. White Yiksha didn't plan on explaining Demon Laplace to Wuming. However, although he had coincidentally woken up, he wasn't weak to be able to deal with Absolute Evil's clone. That Demon Laplace was at least in the 4 digits. Wuming thought so. As for the South District's Absolute Evil clone, it was 16th Knights and Company who helped deal with it. They also gained a wave of no-names reputation. I have to say that they did well. 16th Knights and Company, who were participating in the Dragonhorn Griffin Lions Harvest Festival in the South District, happened to encounter this matter. However, they almost destroyed the Harvest Festival, and they didn't realize it at all. However, White Yiksha looked like he was gloating. As expected of problematic children. Black Rabbit will probably cry for a while. Wuming smiled helplessly. After all, they were problematic children. Benevolence and Black Rabbit had it quite hard. The situation in the North District isn't very good. It's different from the West and East Districts, which are basically undamaged. It's also different from the South District, which has few casualties. The North District can be said to be the worst area. The streets and houses are damaged, and there are many casualties. White Yiksha's expression became melancholic. It's because of Shadora and Company. Wuming understood very well why. Shadora was one of the rulers of the North District's hierarchy. This meant that there were others who shared the position of ruler. Why was that? Naturally, it was because no one in the community in the North District had the ability to be the sole ruler of the hierarchy. Therefore, there were many rulers of the hierarchy who managed the North District together. Wuming did not know much about the rulers of the other classes, but Wuming knew about Shadora. Shadora's individual strength was not enough to fight against the two-headed dragon army. As for Salamandra, a community that relied on group battles, they were also unable to fight against the two-headed dragon army that was also good at group battles. Not to mention, Absolute Evil's doppelganger had the strength of a deity, which was only in the 5 digits. It was probably the same for the other communities of rulers of the other classes. Therefore, when the two-headed dragons attacked the North District, they were unable to eliminate all of the two-headed dragons in an instant. As a result, the two-headed dragons rushed into the city and caused destruction, causing casualties. Lord White Yiksha, I remember that there's that existence in the North District, right? Letitia suddenly asked. That existence? Who's that? Wu-Ming was puzzled. After all, in terms of being familiar with the world of the box, Wu-Ming was a complete novice compared to Letitia. You're talking about that great devil, right? White Yiksha shook a fan that he had taken out of nowhere. Closing the fan instantly, White Yiksha said the other party's name. A great devil born at the boundary between life and death, the leader of the community, Willow's Wisp. He's known as the strongest devil in the North District, Vera Zoignifatis. Chapter 8:15. So it's the leader of Willow's Wisp. Wu-Ming came to a realization. In the competition called Gift of the Creator at the Fire Dragon's Birth Festival, Kasuga Hikari's opponent in the finals was a ghost named Aisha Ignifast, and her companion, Jack the Pumpkin Monster, who came from the community of Willow's Wisp. If that person took action, the army of Absolute Evil's clones should be easily dealt with. It seemed that Letitia acknowledged the other party's strength. It was Vera who took action. The North District was only slightly slower than the other districts in dealing with the Absolute Evil's clones. If Vera did not take action, White Yiksha would have to go to the North District to provide support. Speaking of which, since this devil is so powerful, why isn't she a class controller? Wu-Ming's words were not without reason. Since there was a powerhouse who could deal with the Absolute Evil's clones so cleanly, why was this powerhouse not a class controller? This can be considered Vera's personal reasons, White Yiksha explained vaguely. Personal reasons? Wu-Ming was stunned. In short, if you can see her, you'll know. White Yiksha waved his hand embarrassedly. Immediately after, White Yiksha frowned as if he had encountered something puzzling. But now that you've asked, I'm a little concerned about Vera. She should have been in the North District all along. Why didn't she appear in time to deal with the two-headed dragon army? Could it be that she was delayed by something else? Letitia guessed. That shouldn't be the case. Although she has quite a personality, even if there was something else, she should have put down the matter at hand and dealt with the two-headed dragon's invasion crisis. However, Wu-Ming thought of something. The reason she was delayed, could it be that she fought with the enemy who transferred the two-headed dragon army? After all, the invasion of the Absolute Evil clones that attacked the entire Hakata was man-made. Wu-Ming and the others did not encounter the enemy, but it did not mean that the people in the other districts did not encounter them. Then, Wu-Ming's guess was not without reason. That's possible. White Yiksha's expression was solemn as he nodded. However, because White Yiksha was only collecting information unilaterally and had not seen the person involved, he could not make a judgment. Without further ado, Wu-Ming and White Yiksha began to discuss serious matters. I say, White Yiksha, don't you think the attack this time is very strange? Tell me what you think. White Yiksha was naturally a smart person. If Wu-Ming could see that there was a problem, so could White Yiksha. Absolute Evil's doppelganger may seem powerful, but every region has the ability to deal with it. I think the other party definitely understands this. So, why are they still doing this? Although the griffin named Glea Grove and the black-cloaked girl were easily taken down by Wu-Ming, Wu-Ming didn't think that the other party was a weakling. The black-cloaked girl had the grace of distance control. It didn't seem like much, but it was actually a very rare grace. As for that griffin, although it didn't have any special abilities, it was possible that it hadn't exposed itself yet. Furthermore, the other party's strength was extraordinary. Although it was easily suppressed by Wu-Ming, it was only because Wu-Ming had used giant transformation. Apart from 16th Night, Wu-Ming couldn't guarantee that anyone could wrestle with the griffin. There was also that fellow named Maxwell. Wu-Ming had never understood his ability. On the surface, it looked like a simple teleportation, but Wu-Ming's sixth sense told him that it wasn't that simple. Moreover, Maxwell had an inexplicable resurrection ability. Just this alone made Wu Ming unable to do anything to him for the time being. It could also be a doppelganger or an illusion. In short, Maxwell was very difficult to deal with. Finally, the other party's master, the so-called Highness whose background was unknown, and Wu Ming couldn't be sure if there were others. In short, this faction wasn't simple to Wu Ming. I feel that this attack is just a pretense. It's a cover for the other party's next plan. Oh, did you discover anything? White Yiksha opened his fan with a whoosh. No, Wu Ming answered rather calmly. If you didn't, then what are you talking about? White Yiksha was quite angry. She thought that Wu Ming had discovered some clues. Although I didn't discover anything, we can analyze it. Wu Ming smiled slightly. In this double-headed dragon's attack, which districts suffered the most serious damage? The North and South districts, Letitia immediately answered, giving Wu Ming face. Although the damage in the South district was mainly caused by 16th Night and the others, that's right. The West and East districts didn't suffer much damage. Therefore, the other party's next plan might be carried out in these two damaged districts. After all, the more chaotic it was, the easier it was to stir up trouble. This was the principle of fishing in troubled waters. White Yiksha gently waved his fan and nodded slightly. It does make sense. Seeing White Yiksha nod, Wu Ming continued. This double-headed dragon and the final double-headed dragon in the fire dragon's birth ceremony in the North District must be done by the same person, or rather, by the same faction. Then, Wu Ming changed the topic. And if you say that pest has nothing to do with the other party, I don't really believe it. Letitia and White Yiksha were stunned and then fell into deep thought. Indeed, if pest had nothing to do with the double-headed dragon that appeared in the end, no one would believe it. If pest is the other party's person, and if we had lost the competition, then as the leader, White Yiksha, wouldn't he have fallen completely into the other party's hands? As soon as Wu Ming said this, both Letitia and White Yiksha felt a chill down their spines. Yes, if they had lost the competition, White Yiksha would have become Pest's possession. And if Pest was the person who created the double-headed dragon, then White Yiksha would have fallen into the other party's hands. Both Letitia and White Yiksha knew White Yiksha's power very well. If he was used by someone, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although there was a reason for his defeat, White Yiksha knew that he was too powerful, so he chose to submit to the Buddhists in the end. He obtained Yiksha's godhood and belittled himself. Under the premise that this hypothesis is true, let's change our focus. Wu Ming once again raised a new point of focus. The other party once wanted to purchase Letitia. Letitia and White Yiksha broke out in cold sweat again. You mean that the other party is collecting powerhouses? White Yiksha frowned. Luce once said that the person who wanted to purchase Letitia from Perseus was someone outside the box court. And when I went to meet those people, I was attacked by the double-headed dragon. Since you can't find any information about the enemy who lured the double-headed dragon here at the fire dragon's birth ceremony, this matches up. White Yiksha was enlightened. I see. Because the other party is someone outside the box court, it makes sense that we can't find any information. Immediately after, White Yiksha thought of some information that he needed to inform Wu Ming. Actually, the hierarchy in the South District has changed. Chapter 8:16. The Southern District's hierarchy has changed. Wu Ming was taken aback. That's right, and it happened not long ago. White Yiksha nodded. Not long ago, the community of the former Southern District's hierarchy, Avalon, was attacked. If it wasn't for the Northern District's Willow's Wisp, who happened to be nearby and intervened through unconventional means, I'm afraid Avalon would have been completely wiped out, White Yiksha explained with a serious expression. Wu Ming felt a little unnatural. After all, Avalon was obviously King Arthur's scabbard, Avalon. Since that was the case, the other party was likely related to the Knights of the Round Table. He didn't know if there was a Vilo the Ransword in this world. It shouldn't be. After all, Wait Yiksha and the others didn't have any reaction to his name, as if it was the first time they heard it. Unaware of Wu Ming's random thoughts, Wait Yiksha continued speaking. However, even so, Avalon suffered a devastating blow. The original hierarchy's leader was removed from his position, and the Community Alliance's Dragonhorn Griffin Lion was prepared to take over as the hierarchy's leader. Although he hadn't officially taken over, the other party had already been recognized by the Southern District. Therefore, for now, it didn't matter if it was official or not. At this moment, Letitia raised her hand. Lord Wait Yiksha, do you know who the enemy that attacked Avalon was? Wait Yiksha shook his head helplessly. Unfortunately, although Willow's Wisp forcefully intervened, Avalon did indeed lose to the other party. Although there wasn't much of a loss, the price of Avalon's defeat was that we couldn't reveal the other party's information. Therefore, I don't know who the enemy is. In Suitland, the rules of Suitland were absolute. Therefore, Avalon couldn't reveal the specific situation. However, one thing is clear. The other party is the Demon King. As for why, it was because the black contract documents rained down from the sky at that time. Many people saw it, and everyone in Suitland knew what the black contract documents represented. Therefore, he was most certain that the other party was the Demon King. It can be said that if it wasn't for the intervention of Willow's Wisp, the entire community of Avalon would have been wiped out. However, if it was really as Willow speculated, Avalon would very likely become the possession of the Demon King. Immediately after, Bayasha's eyes narrowed. I suspect that the Demon King who attacked Avalon is from the same faction as Pest and the person who can control the two-headed dragon. Wu Ming crossed his arms and nodded. First, they attacked the Southern District. Then, they attacked the Fire Dragon birth ceremony that was jointly held by the Eastern and Northern Districts. Finally, they attacked the entire box. It seems that the other party is not weak. Although the results showed that the other party had never succeeded, the fact that the other party could continue to cause trouble despite repeated failures was enough to prove that the other party had a deep foundation. Do we need to find Pest for information? Letitia suddenly asked. After all, Pest might know those people. When you see her again, give her a gentle hint. If she really doesn't want to say it, then forget it. I don't really want to treat Pest as an item. Since she joined No Name, she's a family. Wu Ming did not want to treat Pest as a slave. Wu Ming believed that the other members of No Name would not want to do that either. I understand, Master. Letitia nodded and did not say anything else. However, her gaze toward Wu Ming became gentler. If Pest hears your words, I'm afraid Pest will have a better impression of you. Bayasha also turned serious and revealed a frivolous expression again. By the way, Bayasha, how do you know that Pest doesn't have a good impression of me? Wu Ming frowned. Although Pest was indeed very angry with Wu Ming based on his behavior before Wu Ming stabbed him, Bayasha was not present at that time. However, Bayasha's current appearance gave people the feeling that he had a lot of interaction with Pest. Roar. Of course, that's because I used that ring before you came to retrieve it. Pest and I have already talked. Bayasha did not hide anything and told Wu Ming and Letitia the truth. I see. If it's you, you do need to talk to Pest. Letitia nodded in understanding. No one would believe that the incarnation of the Sun and the incarnation of the Black Death did not need to talk to each other. Moreover, Bayasha was in the wrong. After all, it was the Sun's laziness that caused the Black Death to break out. Although Bayasha's words were reasonable, Wu Ming did not believe them. Wu Ming and Bayasha did not have much interaction. However, Bayasha was the only problem child. Wu Ming knew this in his heart. In other words, you didn't do anything strange to Pest, did you, Bayasha? Wuming looked at Bayasha suspiciously. Wuming still remembered that when Pest was summoned, he was silent, or rather, very obedient. Moreover, after standing for a while, Pest's face turned pale and his body stiffened. It looked like his spirit had suffered a severe blow. Now that he thought about it, could it be that Bayasha did something to Pest? What are you talking about? Pest and I just had a good conversation in various aspects. Yes, yes. With a calm expression, White Yiksha indicated that there was only a simple exchange between him and Pest. Then why does Pest look like he's in shock? You really didn't do it. Wuming became more and more suspicious. He knew how powerful a problem child like Bayasha was. Even if she really did it, with Bayasha's thick skin, he would probably not admit it. Is that so? Maybe it's not easy to accept the new environment. However, Bayasha's heart had already begun to change. It was rare that forcing someone to change clothes would leave a deep psychological trauma. But Pest clearly scolded him very happily back then, right? However, just as Bayasha was feeling conflicted, Wuming gave up on asking. I'll believe you for now. Then, Wuming made a request. Bayasha, I hope you can go to the South District and help me tell 16th Night and the others not to come back for the time being. Continue to stay there. It was not that Wuming did not trust the South District, but Wuming trusted his own people more. 16th Night and the others were already considered top-notch in the lower levels of the box court. Wuming believed that even if the enemy wanted to do something bad in the South District, there would be no problem with 16th Night and the others around. More importantly, 16th Night and the others happened to be in the South District. Seeing that Wuming had started to talk about serious matters, Bayasha also became serious. Do you want 16th Night and the others to help keep an eye on the South District? No problem, leave it to me. Bayasha turned his head and looked at Wuming. Then, what do you plan to do? Wuming silently looked north. If it's me, I'll go to the North District. Chapter 8:17. The Southern District is guarded by 16th Night and the others, while the Eastern District is guarded by you, so I've decided to check out the situation in the Northern District. Wuming retracted his gaze from the north and looked at White Yiksha again. I should be relieved to leave the Eastern District to you, right, White Yiksha? Wuming teased with a smile. Wuming didn't look down on White Yiksha just because he couldn't do anything against the twin-headed dragon army. The star spirit of the sun, the devil king of the White Knight, White Yiksha's ability was beyond Wuming's imagination. If White Yiksha recovered his two-digit main body, he would definitely be able to capture the absolute evil doppelganger easily. Back then, he could not do anything about the absolute evil doppelganger because the absolute evil doppelganger came menacingly and there were too many of them. White Yiksha had 14 Sun Sovereigns. Just by using Sun Sovereigns, he could easily eliminate these absolute evil doppelganger. However, if he really used it, the surroundings would probably be in a mess. Because he had too many concerns, White Yiksha was helpless. Facing Wuming's teasing, White Yiksha was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he closed his eyes, opened them, and smiled. Who do you think I am? I'm the ruler of the Eastern District. I bet my name is the Star Spirit of the Sun and White Knight. Leave the Eastern District to me. At this moment, White Yiksha's powerful demeanor was revealed. I'll leave no name to you for the time being, Lord White Yiksha. Letitia was also in awe. With that, Wuming, Letitia, and White Yiksha's conversation ended. After learning from White Yiksha which part of the Northern District suffered the most damage, Wuming and Letitia left. Northern District, between the 3999999 and 4 million outer gates. At a bell tower, a black and purple teleportation door appeared out of thin air. Wuming and Letitia walked out. This seems to be the bell tower that 16th Knight and Black Rabbit destroyed, Master. Letitia recognized the familiar place at a glance. In the end, it was Wuming who helped to repair it. That's right. It's indeed here. After all, didn't White Yiksha say that, it's not intentional or unintentional, the outer gate that held the fire dragon's birth ceremony suffered the most damage? Therefore, Wuming brought Letitia here. Although we can also go to Salamandra's branch here, after thinking about it, I think it's better to stay here. Although Wuming and Salamandra had some conflicts before, after Shadora and Ren re-established an alliance between Salamandra and No Name, the two sides could be considered to have buried the hatchet. However, White Yikshas and Letitia's and White Yikshas and White Yikshas had a White Yiksha. Moreover, this bell tower was located at a commanding height and was very hidden. As for why such a place was needed, it was because it could easily take in the surrounding situation. As I expected, the damage to the northern district is much more serious than what White Yiksha said. They walked to the window of the bell tower and looked around. White Yiksha might have said that the northern district was only slightly slower than the other districts in dealing with absolute evil's doppelganger, but sometimes, being slightly slower would delay things, such as the current northern district. Because the bell tower's geographical location was closer to the center, and because there was no human habitation, it did not suffer fatal damage from absolute evil's doppelganger's attack. It only suffered some damage at the base. Moreover, the other outer gates were not so lucky. Wuming looked around. 7 or 8 of the 10 buildings were completely destroyed. The remaining 2 or 3 were so damaged that they were uninhabitable. Not only that, but Wuming also saw many bloodstains on the streets. These should be the residents' blood. After all, the blood of the two-headed dragon could split again, and it could be the blood of the two-headed dragon that could not split again. However, compared to this, Wuming felt that the two-headed dragon had been killed by people using special methods. He could not see any civilians. They might have been transferred to other outer gates to take refuge. Perhaps it was because the battle had just ended, but the people walking on the streets were basically all fully armed members of the Northern District community. This was because everyone had their own community's coat of arms. Wuming even saw people from Salamandra. Some of them were patrolling to see if there were any other survivors, while others were specifically searching for any two-headed dragons that had been left behind. The possibility of the former was not small. After all, the collapse of the building had knocked out the people who were still alive under it, or the people hiding in the building did not have time to come out because of the collapse. The latter was unlikely. After all, although the two-headed dragons were said to be at the deity level, their strength was only at the deity level. Their intelligence was equivalent to that of an ordinary beast, or even lower. Generally speaking, unless they were all dead, they would not stop. However, there were exceptions. For example, when the two-headed dragon was eliminated, a two-headed dragon had accidentally been buried in the ruins of a building and had just crawled out. Interestingly, Wuming, who was standing at a commanding height, happened to see such a scene. A white two-headed dragon struggled to crawl out of the thick ruins and was ready to attack the patrolling personnel who had just walked away. The patrolling personnel seemed to have heard a trace of a sound and immediately shouted, thinking that there were survivors. "Hey! Are there any survivors? If there are, please answer me." He was also one of the people who thought that it was unlikely for the two-headed dragon to survive. The man shouted as he explored the surrounding ruins. However, he did not know that the survivors he thought were actually the avatars of absolute evil that could take his life. Roar! The two-headed dragon roared and suddenly rushed toward the person who did not discover it. What? The person who heard the sound subconsciously turned his head, only to see the two-headed dragon pouncing towards him with its 2 bloody mouths wide open. He had no time to react. Hey! Suddenly, a girl's voice came from one side, and the two-headed dragon suddenly flew to the other side. Then, a girl with blue and white pigtails appeared in front of the patrolling personnel, half squatting on the ground. This person was a member of Willow's Wisp, Aisha Ignifost. Thank you so much, Master Aisha. He had clearly seen what had happened just now. Aisha had kicked the two-headed dragon away. Otherwise, he might have died in the dragon's mouth. Ha! Aisha said with a trembling voice. You're not injured, right? The battle just ended not long ago, so it's inevitable that there will be remnants. You can't let your guard down. Aisha stood up and criticized the person. Yes, yes. Master Aisha is right. I've learned my lesson. The person who was almost attacked was ashamed. He was indeed careless. If Aisha did not save the situation, he would have instantly died in the two-headed dragon's mouth. If he had been cautious from the beginning and noticed the existence of the two-headed dragon, he would have known that it was only a doppelganger of absolute evil. Even if he couldn't defeat it, he could have fought it for a few seconds and shouted for the surrounding people to come to his aid. In short, he would not be killed in an instant. But fortunately, Aisha was attracted by his shout, thinking that there was a survivor. In short, the result was good. Aisha, the enemy hasn't been defeated yet. You can't be careless. At this time, a big pumpkin head holding a lantern appeared from the side and lectured Aisha in a strange tone. This big pumpkin was Aisha's companion, the pumpkin monster with a lantern, Jack. Of course I know. Aisha's pale face was slightly red, which was particularly eye-catching. At this time, the two-headed dragon that was kicked down had already turned over and was ready to attack again. It's just a 5-digit beast. Watch me take care of it in minutes. Aisha pouted and a blue flame appeared in her hand. Whoosh! But at this time, a white spear instantly pierced through the two-headed dragon's head and nailed it to the ground. Chapter 8:18. Who is it? Aisha immediately became alert and looked in the direction where the spear came from. That was the location of the clock tower. However, the other party appeared from behind Aisha. Long time no see, Aisha, Jack. A dark purple portal appeared behind Jack, and Wuming and Letitia walked out. Oh, so it's Lord Villo and Lord Letitia. Long time no see. Jack immediately greeted Wuming. As a maid, Letitia was befitting of her identity. She slightly bent her back and nodded. Lord Villo and Lord Letitia, why are you in the Northern District? When Aisha saw that it was Wuming and Letitia, she stopped throwing tantrums. Letitia was a senior in the box court, so Aisha naturally knew about her. The news of Wuming defeating the Demon King with a holy spear at the end of the fire dragon's birth ceremony also spread like wildfire. Although Wuming and Letitia were in the no-name community, Aisha would not look down on them because of this. The strong would be respected no matter where they went. So it's Lord Villo and Lord Letitia who defeated the Demon King. The person who was saved by Aisha also recognized Wuming and Letitia. After all, the fire dragon's birth ceremony had just ended. Taking advantage of the popularity, Wuming was quite famous in the Northern District. Hurry up and go. Remember to be careful in the future. Not everyone will come to save you at all times. Seeing that Wuming and Letitia had arrived, Aisha hurriedly prepared to send away the person she saved. Yes, Lord Aisha. I won't disturb your conversation with Lord Jack and the other two. The person quickly got up, bowed to Aisha and Wuming, and then quickly left. He still had to continue patrolling and see if there were any survivors. I didn't know that you were quite famous. Wuming could see that the person who was saved respected Aisha from the bottom of his heart, and not just because she saved his life. From this, it could be seen that Aisha was quite famous in the Northern District. After all, she was not weak. As the saying went, the strong would be respected wherever they went. During the Gift of the Creator finals, if it weren't for the fact that his relationship with Wu Ming had improved, and he had obtained Wu Ming's flame through becoming friends, he would have probably lost to Isha. Of course, I'm very famous in the Northern District. However, as soon as Aisha Wu Ming praised her, she immediately raised her head proudly, her nose almost reaching the sky. By the way, you still haven't told me why you came to the Northern District. Isha turned her head and thought for a moment. Naturally, it is because of these doppelgangers of absolute evil, Wu Ming said, extending his right hand. Yggdrasil, the holy spear that had pierced through the two-headed dragon's head and nailed to the ground, was pulled out of thin air and automatically flew into Wu Ming's hand. This should be the legendary holy spear that destroyed the Demon King with a single blow. It is indeed extraordinary. Although Jack was a creation created by the leader of the Willow's Wisp, he looked more like a powerful spirit that had lived for a long time. Jack could see the details of this pure white spear at a glance. The power it contained, coupled with the fact that it was held by Wu Ming, proved that this was the holy spear that had pierced through the Demon King. If you're referring to the spear that pierced through Pest, it is indeed this one. Wu Ming nodded calmly. Then, Wu Ming casually swung the holy spear, and golden ripples appeared at the tip of the spear, swallowing the holy spear. By the way, Lord Villo already knows that there are doppelgangers of absolute evil here. News travels so fast here. Isha was stunned. It seemed that she still did not know that the 4 districts had been invaded by doppelgangers of absolute evil. It is not only our northern district that has doppelgangers of absolute evil. Doppelgangers of absolute evil have also appeared in the eastern, southern, and western districts. Isha. It seemed that Jack was in the know. Is it that serious? Isha was shocked. Regardless of how many doppelgangers of absolute evil were in the other districts, this had at least affected the entire district. Anyway, I'm here to investigate in the northern district. Wu Ming pointed at the two-headed dragon that had already turned into a dried corpse not far away. I didn't expect to encounter this as soon as I arrived, and even meet you guys. However, Isha looked in the direction Wu Ming pointed at and was shocked by the dried corpse of the two-headed dragon. This. How did it dry up? Jack, on the other hand, saw some clues. It was roasted dry, right? Jack said as his gloved hand stroked the chin of his pumpkin head. Wu Ming nodded and began to explain. That's right. My holy spear is filled with the power of light. The moment it pierced its body, the powerful power of light roasted its blood dry. After all, no one knew if the two-headed dragon's blood would split again. Therefore, to be on the safe side, Wu Ming directly used the power of the holy spear to roast the two-headed dragon's blood dry. Then, Wu Ming waved his hand at the two-headed dragon's corpse. As a gust of wind blew past, the two-headed dragon's corpse shattered and disappeared. Isha swallowed her saliva. Even though she was a spirit, she was still a little frightened by this scene. Of course, it was not that she was afraid of Wu Ming. She was just afraid of Wu Ming's spear. As expected, that spear is an extremely powerful god's persona weapon. Isha estimated that if she was stabbed in her spirit body, she might be instantly roasted dry. You can say that. Wu Ming shrugged. A relic and a godhead weapon could be considered the same thing. Oh right, can you guys explain to me how the Northern District deals with these doppelgangers of absolute evil? After all, he was here to investigate. Naturally, he had to ask the locals. Of course. Let's have Aisha explain it, Jack replied and nudged Aisha. Why do I have to explain when Jack agreed? Isha looked resentful. It was not that she was unwilling to explain, but she was a little upset that Jack had tricked her again. Roar, roar, roar. There's nothing we can do about it, Isha, because I'm just a pumpkin. Roar, roar, roar. Jack let out a strange laugh. I know, let me explain. Isha tidied up her clothes and patted the dust off her skirt symbolically. Then, she began to explain. It was not complicated. The two-headed dragon army that appeared in the northern district suddenly appeared. Nobody knew how they appeared. The location was between the outer gate of 399999 and 40000000. It was the place where the fire dragon's birth ceremony was held some time ago. As the doppelgangers of absolute evil had appeared there before, the surrounding communities had strengthened the defense facilities there. Therefore, when the two-headed dragons invaded, the area between the outer gate of 399999 and 4 million became the best battlefield to fight against the two-headed dragons. At the same time, the two-headed dragon army that was not eliminated in time did not spread out. Instead, they held on until the great devil of the northern district arrived and eliminated the doppelgangers of absolute evil in one fell swoop. So that's how it is. Letitia had an "so that's how it is" look on her face. Indeed, the doppelgangers of absolute evil that were delayed for a short period of time did not spread out. Instead, they were all wiped out in one fell swoop. This was a problem in itself, but this problem was finally solved. However, why would the enemy release the doppelgangers of absolute evil here? Chapter 8:19. Sighing helplessly, Wu Ming could be considered to have accepted it. Sure enough, the courtyard is a magical place. Then, Wu Ming closed his eyes and began to search. After Wu Ming closed his eyes, Letitia revealed a happy smile. Seeing Wu Ming's helpless expression, Letitia was actually quite happy. However, Wu Ming did not know what Letitia was thinking at the moment. He was now fully releasing his spiritual force, preparing to instantly scan the entire outer door. In the courtyard, Wu Ming's spiritual force was basically in a closed state. Even if it was opened, it could only cover a few meters around him. After all, there were many strange people in the courtyard, and there were also many strong people. If he wantonly used his spiritual force to scan, it would easily cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Then, why did Wu Ming want to wantonly use his spiritual force now? It was not because of the so-called crucial moment, but because Wu Ming was preparing to do a detailed operation. Searching without touching anyone. It sounded ridiculous, but it could be done. Or rather, Wu Ming could do it. Wu Ming's spiritual force was extremely powerful. Without touching the human body, Wu Ming could also see that person just by using his spiritual force. However, to search such a large area and find one person among so many people, it was indeed quite difficult, not to mention that the person might not even be here. However, it was still better than shamelessly looking for Salamandra, right? Moreover, what if he found it? For example, now, Wu Ming, who had completely released his spiritual force, saw a transparent world. Every person, every house, every pile of ruins, and even the bloodstains on the ground appeared in Wu Ming's mind. Other than the lack of color, it was a complete God's perspective. And according to Letitia's portrait of Vera, Wu Ming really did find it. In a corner, a young girl with big twin ponytails and prominent breasts looked around, as if confirming that no one had noticed her. Opening his eyes, Wu Ming smiled. As expected, fate is on my side. Could it be that you found Master Vera? Letitia couldn't help but be surprised. To be honest, Letitia did not expect Wu Ming to find Vera here. After all, many people had seen him leave in a hurry. Since that was the case, Vera naturally wouldn't continue to stay here. No, Letitia noticed the problem. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Perhaps the people chasing Vera didn't expect her to choose to stay after dealing with the two-headed dragon. His own cleverness had backfired on him, not good. Wu Ming suddenly shouted. What's wrong, Master? Did Master Vera discover you? Letitia guessed. That's right. Wuming nodded and snapped his fingers. A dark purple ripple appeared. Quick, Vera wants to escape. Wuming said as he pulled Letitia into the portal. In Wuming's vision, Vera, who was carefully looking around, suddenly looked in Wuming's direction. Obviously, she realized that someone had discovered her. Then, Vera turned into a ball of will-o'-the-wisp and quickly moved in a certain direction. As soon as the will-o'-the-wisp left, the dark purple ripple appeared where Vera originally was. Wuming and Letitia jumped out of the ripple and looked around. Looks like Master Vera has escaped. Letitia could still feel the residual energy in the air. Indeed, but in this place that has become my backyard, Vera can't escape. Wuming raised his hand and snapped his fingers again. The portal appeared again. Wuming's spirit scan was still active. How could he let Vera escape? Wuming walked into the portal with a confident smile. Let's go, Letitia, we'll intercept them. As you wish, Master. On the other side, a ball of will-o'-the-wisp escaped into an alley. Dispelling the will-o'-the-wisp, Vera revealed her true form. She looked behind her and made sure that no one was following her. After a short moment of thought, Vera decided to leave. But it was this short moment of thought that caused Vera to lose the chance to leave. Where do you think you're going, Will-o'-the-Wisp's leader, Vera Zaignifost? The dark purple ripple appeared behind Vera, and a rather calm voice was heard. Vera jumped and pulled away, revealing a vigilant look. A man and a woman walked out of the dark purple ripple. They were Wuming and Letitia who were looking for Vera. By the way, Master, your words can easily be misunderstood. Letitia complained to Wuming helplessly. Wuming was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Indeed, his current actions and the words he said just now clearly didn't seem like a good person. I'm sorry, Will-o'-the-Wisp's leader, I apologize for my rudeness. Wuming apologized. Vera did not run away again, perhaps because Wuming's apology worked. However, Vera seemed to be relieved. Wuming also took the opportunity to observe Vera again. Unlike Letitia's black and white painting, the real person was much prettier than Letitia's. She had sharp ears like a fairy's, white hair that was tied into two thick ponytails, and even her eyelashes were white. She wore a black skirt with blue laces and a low neckline that exposed her shoulders. The extremely low neckline accentuated Vera's extraordinary breasts, which was extremely eye-catching. More importantly, her face was extremely cute, with a hint of charm in her innocence. And if Wuming was not mistaken, she seemed to be a little naive. Although Vera was indeed beautiful, Wuming only looked at Vera for a few seconds before starting a formal conversation. I'm Vera Silence Eddy of no name. This is my relative, Letitia Decrea. I've been entrusted by White Yiksha to investigate the matter of Absolute Evil's doppelganger. So, can you please stop running? Wuming naturally did not come to the North District because of White Yiksha's request. However, there had to be a reason for everything, and White Yiksha was the best reason. Even if it was an investigation, Wuming believed that White Yiksha would not expose Wuming. Therefore, Wuming calmly used White Yiksha as a reason. Vera did not speak, but her little head nodded slightly, indicating that she would not run anymore. In fact, when Vera saw who it was, she did not want to run anymore. As long as it was not that guy, everything was fine. Then I'll get straight to the point. Before Absolute Evil's clone caused trouble, did you encounter an enemy? Vera raised her head and poked her chin with one hand. She thought for a moment and silently shook her head, which was very cute. But after shaking her head, Vera immediately nodded again. This made Wuming and Letitia confused. In the end, under Wuming and Letitia's puzzled gaze, Vera walked up to Wuming and pulled up Wuming's sleeve. Help me. Chapter 820. Unlike the traditional demons, as a demon, Vera's voice was exceptionally light, just like an elf's. It was not an exaggeration to say that listening to Vera's voice was a pleasure. Moreover, Vera's "help me," coupled with her current expression, could be said to be lovely and moving. Not only Wuming, but even Letitia's heart had some ripples. "First, tell me what's going on, Vera." Wuming paused for a moment before continuing. "Can I call you that?" Vera was actually very casual when it came to addressing her, so Vera nodded, indicating that she agreed. After Vera nodded, Wuming immediately asked. "Then, Vera, what difficulties have you encountered?" Wuming half squatted down. At this moment, the Vera in front of Wuming didn't seem like the leader of the Willow's Wisp, but more like a little sister asking for help. "There's a pervert following me." Pulling on Wuming's sleeve, Vera's eyebrows twitched slightly, her body shrunk, and her eyes looked around as if she was afraid that the pervert would suddenly jump out. Pervert? Wuming and Letitia couldn't help but be stunned. The first thought that appeared in their minds was that it was inconceivable. Who would dare to follow Vera? After all, Vera wasn't an ordinary person. She was the leader of the Willow's Wisp community in the Northern District, the strongest in the Northern District, a great demon born between life and death, and could easily deal with absolute evil's army of doppelgangers. There was actually someone who dared to follow such a strong person. But then again, if the other party dared to be the pervert tailing, he might not be weak. Otherwise, why would this pervert make Vera show such a disgusted and helpless expression? "Vera, can you tell me about this pervert? For example, his name." No matter what, he still needed to know about this pervert. Wuming wanted to see just which arrogant fellow actually tailed the strongest in the Northern District. Vera nodded, her tone still light as she said the other party's name. "His name is Maxwell." "Maxwell?" Wuming subconsciously repeated. Why did Maxwell come to the Northern District? And he even became a pervert who tailed them. But on second thought, Wuming felt relieved. The twin-headed dragons were closely related to Maxwell. Since an army of twin-headed dragons had appeared in the Northern District, it made sense for Maxwell to be here. However, sizing up Vera, Wuming could not help but guess, could it be that he was a lolicon? No. How could that be? In any case, the other party was someone who was rather calm in front of him. How could he be a pervert? Perhaps the other party was tailing Vera in order to prevent him from providing support. Only then would it be logical. "Master, do you know that guy called Maxwell?" Letitia couldn't help but look at Wuming. After all, Wuming's expression was too obvious. Perhaps Wuming knew Maxwell, or perhaps he knew this person. "I do know Maxwell." Wuming frowned slightly, recalling the unpleasant meeting with Maxwell. "Letitia, do you remember that I once pretended to be someone from Perseus to meet the person who wanted to buy you?" "I remember, Master." Letitia nodded. "But what happened in the end, you didn't tell me, nor did you tell the others from No Name. The person I met wasn't an ordinary buyer. If I'm not mistaken, the absolute evil doppelganger incident that affected the entire suitcase was done by them." "It's indeed shocking," Letitia said calmly. Vera, on the other hand, was startled. Letitia's calmness was also within Wuming's expectations. After all, the last time he went to talk to White Yiksha, Letitia was by his side. Letitia did have some guesses because of Wuming and White Yiksha's words, and Wuming's words just now confirmed Letitia's suspicions. The other party once wanted to buy Letitia. This was what Wuming had said at the time. And Letitia had deduced from this sentence. "At that time, I captured 2 of Maxwell's companions. In the end, some absolute evil doppelganger inexplicably appeared and attacked me. Maxwell took the opportunity to save his companions." Wu-ming would get back at the other party for the loss he suffered at the other party's hands sooner or later. If it's Maxwell, I think I understand why Vera is so distressed. That was because Maxwell had an inexplicable resurrection ability, at least on the surface. Vera, did you kill Maxwell several times, but in the end, he appeared in front of you unscathed? As soon as Wu-ming said this, Vera immediately nodded desperately as if she had met a confidant. Wu-ming thought to himself that it was indeed the case. At that time, Wu-ming did indeed kill Maxwell, and did not show any mercy. Logically speaking, that sense of reality would not lie, but for the sake of caution, Wu-ming had never been able to completely confirm Maxwell's resurrection. And after Vera's confirmation, Wu-ming could also be considered to have confirmed that Maxwell did indeed have an inexplicable resurrection ability. Master, you mean that Maxwell can be resurrected? Letitia was shocked. No matter when or which world it was, resurrection was always a shocking matter. Not to mention Maxwell's unlimited resurrection ability. But, Master, will there really be the gift of unlimited resurrection? What Letitia meant was whether or not the other party had used some other method or gift to master the ability that looked like resurrection in the eyes of outsiders. At the very least, from our point of view, Maxwell has indeed been resurrected. As if responding to Wu-ming's words, Vera's little head nodded fiercely. Since the two powerhouses, Wu-ming and Vera, had said so, Letitia, who had never seen Maxwell's resurrection, had to obey the majority. If that's the case, then this Maxwell will be difficult to deal with. Letitia crossed her arms in distress. Just the uncontrollable resurrection ability alone was enough. Vera had no choice but to hide from Maxwell. Indeed, in addition to the resurrection ability, Maxwell is also a 4-digit demon king, and he has the ability to teleport multiple units. These two-headed dragons were probably transported by him. The teleportation ability could be used to attack and defend, save teammates, escape, and transport the two-headed dragon army. The opponent was a 4-digit demon king, and he also had a troublesome resurrection ability. It was a powerful enemy. Of course, if Wu-ming could find the main body, Wu-ming could keep Maxwell in a constant state of resurrection. With that in mind, Wu-ming's thoughts drifted back to his main body. He wondered how the main body's injuries were recovering. The feeling of being blasted by the black mud was not pleasant. Back then, after Wu-ming transferred his mind to the backup machine of the root, Wu-ming still suffered from mental damage, and it was not light. As for how the main body was injured, Wu-ming, who had completely cut off the connection, did not know. He had to hurry. With that in mind, Wu-ming looked at Vera again. Maxwell's group seemed to know the whereabouts of Wu-ming's main body, and it just so happened that Maxwell bumped into the muzzle of the gun. If Wu-ming did not shoot, it would be a waste of Maxwell's rare action. Then, Wu-ming, who was looking at Vera, spoke. Vera, can you tell us more about Maxwell? Chapter 8:21. With Vera's approval, Wu-ming and Letitia left with Vera. Wu-ming opened the portal and the three of them returned to No Name's base. In the conference room of No Name, Wu-ming and Vera sat together on the sofa. This was because Vera did not let go of Wu-ming's sleeve after pulling it up. Vera did not care about Wu-ming's distress. She seemed to be very curious about Wu-ming's portal as she looked at the location where the portal had disappeared. Is there something you care about, Vera? Wu-ming looked at the place where Vera was looking but did not find anything special. Vera did not say anything. She only reached out her hand and pointed at the place where the portal had disappeared. Master Vera should be interested in your teleportation portal, Master. Letitia poured tea for Vera as she answered Wu-ming. Master Vera can freely control the realm gate. To a certain extent, Master Vera has the same ability as you. Thank you, Vera thanked Letitia in an adorable tone, but she didn't have the slightest self-awareness. She hugged the teacup with both hands. You're welcome, Master Vera. Letitia was very pleased and nodded with a smile. Then, Letitia came to Wu Ming's side and poured tea for Wu Ming. Wu Ming's eyes lit up because of Letitia's words. Vera could freely control the realm gate, and this ability was indeed very similar to Wu Ming's portal. However, the realm gate was fixed, while Wu Ming's ability was not. Moreover, Wu Ming's portal could only be used to go to places. However, both had their advantages. Then we are really fated. Wu Ming smiled. Vera still did not speak, only her little head nodded fiercely. At this time, Letitia, who was standing behind Wu Ming, spoke. Sir Vera, please tell us more about Maxwell. After all, Wu Ming and Letitia brought Vera back to No Name to obtain information about Maxwell. Therefore, Vera began a very short explanation. Because Vera did not speak much, Wu Ming and Letitia could only speculate further from Vera's words. However, because Vera tried her best to avoid Maxwell, Vera did not know much about Maxwell. Most of the information she said was the same as what Wu Ming knew. Combined with the information previously known, it could be summarized into the following points. Maxwell was a newly promoted demon king who came from the outside. He had control over ice and fire, multiple units of teleportation, as well as the strange ability to resurrect. He was also connected with Absolute Evil's doppelganger. Apart from this, Wu Ming also knew one more thing. Maxwell didn't just start tailing Vera. Instead, he started tailing her before she even arrived at the box court. According to Vera, it was because she could not stand Maxwell's tailing that Vera came to the box. Wu Ming, who knew the truth, had a complicated feeling. Because, from this, it could be seen that Maxwell was really a pervert, but Wu Ming looked at Vera's extremely unscientific body and her naturally beautiful face. Vera noticed Wu Ming's gaze and responded to Wu Ming with her head tilted in confusion. Wu Ming seemed to understand Maxwell's perverted behavior. Huff. Wu Ming sighed and lay down on the sofa behind him. Even if they managed to gather information on Maxwell, he would still be a huge problem. And this big problem was his strange resurrection ability. Although he could choose to trap Maxwell, don't forget that Maxwell also had the ability to teleport. Moreover, he did not know if he still had other abilities because Vera just said that she tried her best to avoid Maxwell. It was not easy for a natural airhead like Vera to know a lot of information about someone she hated the most and tried her best to avoid. Oh right, Wu Ming also knew the main reason why Vera was not the ruler of the hierarchy. It was because of Vera's natural airhead attribute. Speaking of which, Vera, where did you meet Maxwell? Since he could not think of a way to deal with Maxwell, he had to change the entry point 54545 Outer Gate. Vera answered truthfully 54545 Outer Gate. Wu Ming was stunned. If I remember correctly. Wu Ming said and looked at Letitia. That's right, Master. Outer Gate 54545 is where Salamandra's headquarters is located. Letitia confirmed. Vera, other than Maxwell, did you meet anyone else? For example, Maxwell's companions or something? Vera tapped her cheeks, thought for a moment, and finally shook her head. That guy's vigilance is quite high. Wu Ming frowned. But thinking about it carefully, for something like tailing, no matter how thick-skinned Maxwell was, it was impossible for him to bring his companions. Master, do you want to go to 54545 Outer Gate to take a look? After a brief consideration, Wu Ming nodded. I can go take a look. But at this moment, a piece of parchment floated in from the window and automatically flew to the coffee table in front of Wu Ming. The parchment was engraved with the emblem of two goddesses, which was the symbol of 1,000 eyes. Could it be White Yiksha? Wu Ming picked up the parchment and turned it around to read. Master, is there a new situation? Letitia asked worriedly. Vera also looked at Wu Ming curiously. Wu-Ming raised his head and looked at Letitia and Vera. The southern district was attacked again. 21053880 Outer Gate, Thous and Eyes, Branch. Although White Yiksha was sitting on the mattress like the previous few times, White Yiksha now had his eyes closed and his arms crossed in front of his chest. He looked like he had a headache. Blackish-purple ripples appeared and White Yiksha immediately opened his eyes. Wu-Ming, Letitia, and Vera walked out of the portal. Vera. I didn't expect you to kidnap her to the Eastern District. White Yiksha looked particularly surprised before revealing a gentlemanly smile. She didn't expect Wu-Ming to bring Vera to the Eastern District. Vera looked at White Yiksha in disdain before shrinking behind Wu-Ming and tugging at his sleeve. How's the Southern District now, White Yiksha? Wu-Ming ignored White Yiksha's frivolity and immediately asked. Don't worry. Sit. Seeing Wu-Ming's arrival, White Yiksha changed his previous demeanor and became very calm. Seeing White Yiksha's calm expression, Wu-Ming didn't look anxious at all and sat down facing White Yiksha. White Yiksha spoke first. To be honest, I didn't expect you to come so quickly. After all, Wu-Ming had gone to the Northern District to investigate. On the parchment that White Yiksha sent to No Name, he only wrote that he saw a trip to the 21053880 Outer Gates, Thous and Eyes, Branch. Then I'm really sorry, Wu-Ming replied indifferently. This made White Yiksha glare at Wu-Ming. Forget it. Let's talk business. The Southern District was attacked again. Chapter 822. After the absolute evil clones in the South District were defeated by the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion, the Harvest Festival couldn't continue. Although Wu-Ming did not know how many absolute evil clones attacked the South District, the number should be about the same as the absolute evil clones that attacked the East District. If Wu-Ming had not used his authority, he would not have been able to deal with such a number. Therefore, Wu-Ming had expected the South District to be unable to continue the Harvest Festival. Of course, because the Harvest Festival was about to end, the organizer, the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion, directly moved the Harvest Festival to the Midnight Festival. The Midnight Festival was like a party after a large-scale event. In short, it was a summary. However, Wu-Ming could not help but ask about this. Wait a minute, absolute evil clones aren't a small matter, right? Why does the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion want to continue the Midnight Festival? The absolute evil clones were one of the final human trials. Wu-Ming did not think that the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion was unaware of this. As for Maxwell and the others, not to mention that they had an unknown number of absolute evil clones, the other party was in existence that attacked the entire box. Facing such an enemy, even White Yiksha was troubled. Yet the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion still had the mood to continue the Midnight Festival. Actually, this Harvest Festival is similar to the Fire Dragon Birth Festival in the North District. It's a grand event for the Dragon Horn Griffin Lion Alliance's speaker to become the ruler of the South District. Naturally, it can't end carelessly. Wu-Ming nodded and said thoughtfully. I was negligent. Although Wu-Ming did not care much about his reputation, it was indeed a matter of importance to the collective. However, it's also related to the fact that the South District did not suffer any losses, White Yiksha added. Ahem, that's a digression. Immediately after, White Yiksha coughed and began the overall story. Just after you left for the North District, the South District was attacked again. It was still absolute evil clones. White Yiksha took out a piece of parchment and placed it in front of Wu-Ming with a serious expression. Wu-Ming picked up the parchment and read it. The parchment contained information from the South District. The transmission method was the same as when White Yiksha sent the parchment to No Name. How is that possible? Does he have an endless supply of absolute evil doppelgangers? Letitia was shocked. It would have been understandable if other fiend kings had attacked. After all, it was excusable for them to attack while the people in the South District were exhausted after dealing with Absolute Evil's avatar. However, it was still Absolute Evil's doppelganger that attacked him. This proved that the ones who came to attack this time were still the same group of people who had caused the attacks in the 4 districts of Boxing: East, South, West and North. Furthermore, the other party even had a clone of Absolute Evil. After all, the number of Absolute Evil clones at the end of the Fire Dragon's birth ritual, as well as the Absolute Evil clones that attacked the North, South, East, and West districts, was already quite terrifying. However, even after exhausting so many of Absolute Evil's doppelgangers, the other party still had reserves. How could Letitia not be surprised? I think so too, but this is the truth. White Yiksha sighed helplessly. Fortunately, the members of No Name listened to Master Ru's words and didn't return. You should know that it wasn't just 16 knights and the others. Ren was also in the limelight in the battle against Absolute Evil's clone. White Yiksha opened his folding fan and gently fanned himself. He was very satisfied with No Name gaining reputation again. I see. It must be Argel's doing. Wuming was relieved. He then put down the parchment. After Wuming sold off Luo's community, Perseus, Wuming, who did not need Argel's strength, handed Argel to Ren. Ren's gift could ignore the difference in strength between the contractor, and perfectly control the contractor. After all, Argel was the astral spirit, the leader of the 3 strongest races in Boxing: East. When Argel was at his peak, even if he was not comparable to White Yiksha, he was already extremely powerful. In the end, Argel was bound by the so-called inheritance. In the end, he lost his rationality and had a large number of shackles placed on his body. He was then used by the profligate Luos. As there were too many shackles on Argel, removing them all at once would cause irreversible damage to Argel. Therefore, Ren's gift could not completely restore Argel to his peak. However, Argel's combat strength in Ren's hands was much stronger than when he was in Luo's hands. Furthermore, Wuming also believed that sooner or later, Argel would return to his peak in Ren's hands. That's right. Argel's demon eyes of petrification have a natural restraining effect on Absolute Evil's doppelgangers. It's all thanks to Ren. I just received news that the Absolute Evil doppelgangers that attacked again have all been eliminated. White Yiksha said as he took out another parchment. After all, Argel's demon eyes of petrification could also petrify the blood of the Absolute Evil doppelgangers. In that case, there would be no blood proliferation. So you're keeping us in suspense, White Yiksha. Wuming did not know whether to laugh or cry. He took the parchment in White Yiksha's hand and looked at it. Although I do have such intentions, cough cough cough. I've also been troubled by the matter of the Absolute Evil doppelgangers. White Yiksha, who quickly changed his words, had a melancholic expression. After all, the enemy has repeatedly attacked the various districts. This is definitely not a simple attack. If it was not a simple revenge on society, then there must be a reason, or a purpose. Obviously, it could not be the former, so it must be the latter. But we have no way of knowing what the other party is trying to do. Letitia sighed. Perhaps it was to confuse people that the other party attacked the 4 districts in the Eastern, Southern, Western, and Northern district. Now, they had attacked the Southern district again. Moreover, the other party has a teleportation-type gift. It's not easy to catch them. We haven't caught the other party's tail, so we have no idea where to start. Wuming crossed his arms helplessly. If he had known this would happen, Wuming would not have let Maxwell save the man and beast that he had captured. However, Wuming looked at Vera, who was kneeling beside him and tugging at his sleeve. At the moment, he could only rely on Vera. Through Vera, he could find Maxwell and use her to contact him. In the end, Wuming looked at White Yiksha. Since the Southern District has been attacked again, you should pay more attention to the Eastern District. After all, since the other party could attack the Southern District again, it was possible that they could attack the Eastern District again. Of course, it was the same for the Northern and Western Districts. Don't worry, leave it to me. However, where are you going? Since Wu Ming said that, it must be because he was not going to stay in the Eastern District. White Yiksha understood that. I'm going to take a look at the Northern District again. Wu Ming stood up and prepared to leave. However, at that moment, a piece of parchment flew in from the window and landed in White Yiksha's hands. White Yiksha's expression changed when he saw the contents of the parchment. The Northern District has been attacked again. Chapter 8:23. What? Letitia was alarmed. Vera didn't say a word, but her eyes revealed a hint of worry. Even if she wasn't a Stratum ruler, she still took the safety of the North District very seriously. After all, she was the leader of Willow's Wisp and a member of the North District. Wu Ming frowned and immediately said, "Tell me the location." "Tell me the location." "I'll be there immediately." Wu Ming really didn't expect that the North District would be attacked just as he said that the other districts might be attacked. White Yiksha didn't say a word as he threw the parchment to Wu Ming. Wu Ming caught the parchment and took a closer look. Has Salamandra's headquarters been attacked? Wu Ming thought to himself. Indeed. It was now certain that Vera's encounter with Maxwell at the outer gate of 54,545 wasn't a coincidence. Instead, it had been premeditated by the other party. As for Salamandra, it was a 5-digit community and didn't have any high-end combat strength. Just Maxwell alone was enough to give Salamandra a hard time. Furthermore, Maxwell's companions might be there as well. I think the other party is quite premeditated. White Yiksha's expression was somewhat gloomy. By repeatedly attacking the box court, not only did this mean that they didn't take the Stratum Guardian seriously, but it also meant that the other party was on the move. Right on the heels of that, White Yiksha looked at Wu Ming. Although the letter asks for my assistance, Salamandra is an ally of No Name, and the letter also states that you have already sent a distress letter to No Name. It was true that No Name was an ally of Salamandra, but distant water couldn't quench a nearby fire. It was unlikely that Salamandra didn't understand this principle. Even if Shadora knew that Wu Ming had a teleportation door, Wu Ming had never been to the outer gate of 54,545, so the teleportation door couldn't be used. From the looks of it, Salamandra was only asking for help symbolically. They mainly wanted to rely on White Yiksha. The branches of Thous and Eyes were interconnected, and the branches of Thous and Eyes were spread across the 4 districts. Therefore, White Yiksha could move to other districts through the branches. However, White Yiksha couldn't go with Wu Ming. What if the East District was attacked again the moment they left? Stay in the East District. Also, help me protect No Name. Even without White Yiksha, Wu Ming had his own means of heading to the North District. Wu Ming tossed the parchment aside and walked towards the door. Wu Ming was not a so-called good person. In a situation where he could not protect everyone, he would take a step back and choose to protect his own people. No Name. White Yiksha and Ease. Of White Yiksha, of White Yiksha, White Yiksha, White Yiksha's, White Yiksha of S and Eyes, of White of Yak. 3 years ago, when the Infernal Yiksha attacked, No Name, White Yiksha should have gone to meet the attack. However, she knew that as a 4-digit number, she didn't have the ability to deal with the Infernal Yiksha that attacked No Name. Why was that? 3 years ago, No Name was the largest community in the East District. It had many high-end combat forces. Even a 4-digit number of White Yiksha couldn't deal with No Name. Even so, Infernal Yiksha still attacked No Name. From this, it could be seen that the enemy was very powerful. It was likely to be in the double digits, or at least in the triple digits. White Yiksha naturally wouldn't be afraid of such an enemy in the past. This required White Yiksha to return her godhood and retrieve her spirit spark. However, 3 years ago, White Yiksha hesitated. And it was this hesitation that caused No Name to become what it was now. And White Yiksha felt guilty for 3 years. Black Rabbit's frequent hosting of the gift competition was actually one of White Yiksha's ways of compensating No Name. In the name of White Yiksha, leave the East District and No Name in my hands. That was White Yiksha's former name. It was his name when he was a Infernal Yiksha. After nodding, Wuming took Vera and walked out of the room without looking back. In Wuming's opinion, White Yiksha's words were enough. Letitia bowed to White Yiksha and then turned to leave. Gotcha, Letitia closed the door. The sound of the door closing was particularly prominent in the room where only White Yiksha was left. White Yiksha, who was sitting on the cushion, waved his hand. The parchment that Wuming had casually thrown away flew into White Yiksha's hand. 54545 Outer Gate. White Yiksha closed his eyes slightly. It was unknown what he was thinking about. Then, the parchment in White Yiksha's hand instantly burned. White Yiksha waved his hand and the flames burned out. The parchment also burned to ashes. Then, the room returned to silence. Outside the This and Yes branch, Letitia caught up with Wuming. Master, how do you plan to go to the North District? Letitia's question made Wuming stop. After all, even if he used a teleportation door, Wuming could not directly go to the 54545 Outer Gate. He would have to put in more effort. Regarding this problem, I plan to ask Vera for help, Wuming said as he looked at Vera, who was still tugging at his sleeve. Vera tilted her head. Her face was expressionless, but Wuming could tell from her eyes that Vera was saying yes. Indeed, we can ask Lady Vera to send us there. Villo could control the realm door and instantly go to the 54545 Outer Gate. And Letitia had also thought of the idea that Wuming had thought of. How about it, Vera? Can you help me? Wuming asked Vera. Vera nodded her little head, indicating that she could. Then, Master, there's no time to lose. Let's set off quickly. After all, the Demon King that attacked the North District could not be resisted by Salamandra alone, not to mention that the attacker might have companions. Moreover, the strongest combat power in the North District had been brought to Wuming's side. The 54545 Outer Gate was very dangerous at the moment. If they delayed for too long, Salamandra might be completely wiped out. However, Wuming rejected Letitia's suggestion. No, Letitia, you stay in No Name. Vera and I will go to the North District. Master. Letitia was confused for a moment. Because she was a maid, Letitia had developed the habit of following her master around. Therefore, Letitia was a little reluctant to not let her go to the North District with Wuming. Wuming reached out and pressed Letitia's head. He rubbed Letitia's beautiful blonde hair. No matter what, No Name has to leave a powerhouse behind. I have no intention of leaving everything to White Yiksha alone. Then, Wuming smiled at Letitia. Our community, can I leave it to you, Letitia? Letitia was momentarily stunned by Wuming's smile, but then, Letitia came back to her senses. The rejections in his heart also vanished. Yes, leave it to me, Master. With a confident expression, Letitia affirmed Wuming's decision. Letitia spread her wings and flew up into the sky. She then flew towards the location of No Name. Finally, Wuming looked at Vera. Please, Vera. Chapter 824. North District, 54545 Outer Gate. A huge gate stood in the fiery red square. Due to the Demon King's attack, there was no one around the square. However, traces of panic could be seen on the ground. At that time, the unimportant items in the people's hands had all turned into trash lying on the ground, reflecting the panic of the people. In contrast to the empty realm gate, there was a city called Blazing Flame City not far away, which was full of chaos. At this moment, the realm gate, which was a film of light, fluctuated a little, which was a sign that someone was about to come out of the realm gate. Pop, like a bubble bursting, a man and a woman jumped out of the realm gate. Patter, the man hugged the girl, stood on the ground, and looked around. Is this the 54545 outer gate? The newcomers were naturally Wu Ming and Vera. Vera, who was nestled in Wu Ming's arms, nodded silently, then pulled on Wu Ming's sleeve, indicating Wu Ming to put her down. I'm sorry, Vera. Wu Ming quickly and gently put Vera on the ground. After all, for people who had just met, this was considered rude. However, because Wu Ming was in a hurry and Vera kept pulling on Wu Ming's sleeve, Wu Ming, who was in a hurry, directly carried Vera and flew into the realm gate controlled by Vera. However, Vera wasn't dissatisfied at all. Perhaps to Vera, as long as it wasn't Maxwell, she could accept anyone with a good impression. After putting Vera down, Wu Ming looked at the huge red city not far away, Blazing Flame City. Sure enough, it was attacked by the Demon King. With Wu Ming's eyesight, he could see that there were barbarian-like giants holding long sticks, destroying the city. And those who were stopping and attacking these giants were vipers flying in the sky, as well as the half-dragons on their backs. Without a doubt, those were the Viper cavalrymen that Salamandra was proud of. However, in the face of these giants, the Viper Dragon cavalry that they were so proud of played a role. Perhaps Wu Ming could not see the members of Salamandra who were blocking the giants on the ground of Blazing Flame Capital. Quick, Vera, let's hurry over. Wu Ming said and was about to leave. However, she pulled Wu Ming's sleeve. Wu Ming turned his head and saw Vera's adorable and charming face. However, her face was filled with disgust. Vera. Wu Ming was confused. However, in the next moment, Wu Ming, who had understood something, instantly spread out his mental strength. Who is it? Wu Ming frowned and looked ahead. The voice that was infused with magic spread out in all directions in a visible sound wave. Not far away, some figures suddenly appeared outside the nearest city gate of Brilliant Flame Capital. Among them was Maxwell, who looked quite gentlemanly but was quite perverted. Vera frowned because she noticed Maxwell's presence. Vera, who saw Maxwell, was even more disgusted and began to hide behind Wu Ming. If Wu Ming was not mistaken, Maxwell shamelessly showed an extremely gentlemanly smile to himself, or to Vera who was behind him. However, that smile disgusted Wu Ming no matter how he looked at it. Immediately afterward, Maxwell waved his hand, and Maxwell and the few people around him disappeared in an instant. Maxwell and the others who disappeared did not escape because their ambush was discovered. Instead, they appeared in front of Wu Ming and Vera. Ah, my bride, I finally see you again. Maxwell, pretending to be affectionate, stretched out his hand to Vera and smiled rather disgustingly. However, Maxwell's behavior made Vera, who was originally showing her head, completely shrink behind Wu Ming. Seeing this scene, Maxwell's originally smiling face instantly became gloomy. So that's how it is, it was you who kidnapped my bride. Maxwell looked at Wu Ming as if he was thinking of a way to kill Wu Ming and take back his bride. However, this made Wu Ming feel even more disgusted. Just how little self-awareness did Maxwell have? Can't he see that Vera actually hates him? However, just as Wu Ming was about to open his mouth to mock Maxwell, one of Maxwell's companions spoke. Nice to meet you, Mr. Vera Cyrus Eddy. My subordinates will be in your care. A youthful voice entered Wu Ming's ears. Following Maxwell were two black-cloaked people. Wu-Ming had an impression of one of the black-cloaked people. It was the girl who was captured by Wu-Ming along with the griffin when Wu-Ming went to meet the buyer who wanted to buy Letitia from Perseus. The one who spoke just now was the other black-cloaked person beside the girl. Seems like you are their master. Wu-Ming confirmed. After all, the word subordinate was used, so he must be the other party's leader without a doubt. Not at all, we are just companions working together. I can't be called master. The youth was rather humble. It didn't seem like he was talking to an enemy at all. Instead, it seemed like he was talking to a good friend. However, Wu-Ming felt that the youth was purposely calling them companions. Because the girl beside the youth seemed like a subordinate, but Maxwell didn't seem like a subordinate at all. Logically speaking, once the leader spoke to the other party, the subordinate should have retreated and stopped what he was doing. However, Maxwell didn't do so. He still looked like he wanted to kill Wu-Ming, and his mouth kept muttering words like, "I'll kill you." This was clearly something that only people who didn't put the youth as their master in their eyes would do. Seems like Maxwell's relationship with these people isn't that simple. Wu-Ming thought to himself. Your companion is a bit mentally unstable right now. Wu-Ming pointed at Maxwell rather politely. However, the youth didn't say anything. Also, Wu-Ming didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the youth was rather helpless. This made Wu-Ming squint his eyes. Sure enough, Maxwell and the other party weren't just companions. Then, Wu-Ming pointed at the youth again. Also, I'm not interested in people who hide their heads and don't dare to show their true faces. However, the youth just smiled at this. Then, the youth spoke to Maxwell. Maxwell, leave the villa to us, Vera, your bride, I'll leave it to you. The youth had to change the way he addressed Vera because of Maxwell's fierce gaze. However, Wu-Ming just smiled at this. Count Vera's share as mine. In the end, Wu-Ming looked at Maxwell with a rather contemptuous gaze. Although I don't want to fight with a guy that I easily defeated again. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.